Chapter 491. Those numerous terrifying thoughts represented the numerous old fellows that were lying dormant in Azure Deer Academy. Earlier, when Gu Yunting ascended into the Spirit Ocean Immortal rankings, it had alarmed them, yet never had they imagined that not long after, the ancient stone tablet would actually produce a phenomenon of the heavens and the earth once more. Moreover, the phenomenon this time was extremely special, and it hadn't been described in a few thousands of years, causing them to be surprised and bewildered. The grand Tao flower descended while golden rays of light shot into the heavens and the earth. What exactly did this represent? Dong! Suddenly, the ancient sound of the Tao that was like the sound of nature resounded once more from the ancient stone tablet, and it was filled with the aura of time and was mysterious and unfathomable. Rays of light seethed while divine radiance enshrouded the area, and it was like a waterfall of the grand Tao was descending from the stone tablet. Every single wave contained a profound and unfathomable aura. It's the third time. The phenomenon of the heavens and the earth is becoming more and more magnificent. Why have I never heard of such an incident occurring in the past? Strange, the Spirit Ocean Gold rankings still appear on the stone tablet, and there's no trace of the immortal rankings. Those terrifying thoughts were shocked, and they were even more unable to figure it out. As for Shi Yu, Ning Meng, and the others, as well as the disciples of the martial Tao courtyard, all of them were stunned on the spot at this moment. They were awed by the sound of the Tao, causing their minds to go blank. At this moment, the sound of nature that was filled with an ancient aura reverberated in the sky above the entire martial Tao courtyard, and it caused a great uproar and shock. All the instructors and students stopped what they were doing as they felt their hearts tremble, and they were unable to maintain their calm as they raised their eyes to look at the same place, Spirit Ocean Peak. Golden rays of light dyed the sky there, and the aura of the grand Tao transformed into a waterfall of divine radiance that descended into the world. It was like a divine paradise, and it was shocking. What's going on? Many people were bewildered. Dong! Not long after, the fourth sound of the Tao resounded out, and it resonated with the ancient stone tablet. Faintly, one could even see the phenomenon of flowers falling from the sky, divine light fluttering about, golden lotuses gushing out from the ground, and sages chanting scriptures. It was too blazing and grand, and it caused those terrifying thoughts to fall into silence and be unable to understand it. At this moment, it wasn't just the martial Tao courtyard, the Hidden Dragon Institute, the True Martial Courtyard, the Spirit Inscription Courtyard, the Divine Strategy Courtyard, and some other even more mysterious areas were reverberating with the sound of the Tao. It was like the roar of a dragon or the cry of a phoenix, and an auspicious aura suffused the sky. On a limestone path, Gu Yunting, who wore white clothes and was otherworldly like a banished immortal, had suddenly stopped moving, and then he turned around to look towards the distance. His eyes that were brilliant like stars shot out a dazzling light violently, and he seemed to want to see through everything. Then he was stunned. It was the position of the spiritual C golden list. Could it be that there was someone else who was also trying to break through the spiritual C master list after him? Gu Yunting was silent for a moment, and then his figure suddenly vanished on the spot. The tune of the Tao is resounding, and the grand Tao concepts are numerous. Could it be that something shocking is about to occur? The entire Green Deer Academy was alarmed, and there was an uproar everywhere. At the foot of the Spirit Ocean Peak, a skinny old man appeared out of nowhere. He looked extremely ordinary, and his hands were behind his back as he walked up the stairs. "Ah, you don't want to leave your name?" The old man raised his head. His face was thin, his eyes were muddy, and the corners of his eyes were filled with wrinkles, causing him to emanate an aura of age. But when he raised his eyes to look at the ancient stone steel, his muddy eyes suddenly became deep like a pair of black holes. Mysterious markings of the grand Tao surged within them, and they even penetrated space and seemed to be capable of seeing through the world. I can't allow this to continue. After a short while, the skinny old man frowned and flicked his sleeve. It was a casual movement, yet a gust of violent wind suddenly arose in the sky, and it blew away the layer of clouds in the surroundings. The surging golden light and descending divine radiance seemed as if they were wiped away by a shapeless hand, and they instantly vanished into thin air as if they'd never appeared. Swish! At the same time, a shapeless force enveloped down and covered this area. Instantly, all sound vanished. The azure blue sky was silent, and the ancient stone steel was still suffused with golden light, yet it wasn't as grand as it was before. Who's making a move? This. What? You. You've been alarmed as well? Those terrifying consciousnesses had always been paying attention to this area, and when they noticed all these changes, it caused them to be astounded. Especially when they noticed the figure of the skinny old man, those terrifying consciousnesses seemed to feel disbelief and fell into shock. All of you can leave. Don't tell anyone about what happened today. The skinny old man sighed lightly. His words were spoken in a casual manner, yet it was like an order that couldn't be disobeyed, and it caused those terrifying consciousnesses to withdraw their consciousnesses without the slightest hesitation. At the same time, the skinny old man arrived at the top of the mountain, and he saw Yu and the others who'd fallen into a dumbstruck state, as well as the students of the Marshall Dow courtyard. In the end, his gaze descended onto Lin Sun, who stood before the stone steel. So, it's this little fellow. At this moment, Lin Sun's state was extremely strange. It was as if his soul had left his body and arrived at a river of time. The numerous waves seemed to be floating and sinking from ancient times until now, and they flowed along an unfathomable path towards an unknown distance. Lin Sun stood towering on one of the waves and moved against the current, and his gaze seemed as if it was looking back in time and wanted to recall the history of the past. He saw many figures, each of which was as bright as the blazing sun, floating and sinking on the waves. Each of them was so eye-catching that they illuminated a part of the world. When Lin Sun's gaze fell on the nearest figure, he immediately saw that the golden light on the other's body faded away, and a burly and majestic figure appeared. It was a young man with broad eyebrows and purple light in his eyes. He was born with a strange phenomenon, and he had an iron-blooded and unyielding momentum. In an instant, Lin Sun came to a realization in his heart. Ing Xinghin ranked 100th on the spiritual sea general list 149 years ago. This young man turned out to be a talent from 149 years ago. Until now, his mark was still on the spiritual sea general list and hadn't faded. Lin Sun was shocked. He moved his gaze and looked at the figure in front of Ing Xinghin. In an instant, the image of a beautiful woman appeared. She wore plain clothes and green shoes, and her black hair was coiled into a bun. Her face was beautiful, as she carried a snow-white silver sword on her back, looking valiant and formidable. Su Yao ranked 99th on the spiritual sea general list 399 years ago. Lin Sun finally understood that the place where he stood was an illusion derived from the spiritual sea general list. The figures that appeared in the river of time were the peerless figures on the spiritual sea general list. Even after thousands of years, their rankings were still there and had never been shaken. In other words, they were the 100 most outstanding talents in the sea spirit realm of Green Deer School in the past thousands of years. No, Guyunting has already entered, and the ranking of the spiritual sea general list has been shaken and has undergone subtle changes. But I don't know where he is at this time. Lin Sun was lost in thought. He continued to look down. As his eyes met, the figure that was originally shrouded in bright golden light and could not be looked at directly showed its true face one after another. Qin Weiyang ranked 98th on the spiritual sea general list 477 years ago. Song Qingxi ranked 654 years ago. Hua Linyuan ranked 813 years ago. Zhao Yunxi, looking at them one by one, Lin Sun's emotions fluctuated. Those figures all represented the most dazzling talents in a certain period in the past. Each of them had their own power. Some were heroic, some were elegant, some were violent and powerful. If Lin Sun didn't guess wrong, Most of the figures he saw were from the imperial family and the 7 top aristocratic forces of the empire, through their surnames. This made Lin Sun sigh with emotion. This was the foundation of the big forces. Soon, Lin Sun saw a familiar figure, Gu Yunting, ranked 64th on the spiritual C general list. This guy is really abnormal. It's absolutely not easy for him to rank 64th among the 100 talents born in thousands of years. Lin Sun was sighing with emotion in his heart when he suddenly found a problem. He couldn't see the figure in front of Gu Yunting clearly. The figure was filled with golden light, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see its face. At the same time, Lin Sun also found that those figures he had seen through were now flowing away with the waves and falling behind him. Did this mean that with his current combat strength, foundation, and talent, he could rank 63rd on the spiritual C general list? Dong! Suddenly, a sound like the sound of nature rang out, making Lin Sun's mind tremble. At the same time, an obscure and strange force poured into his body and began to spread, as if it was perceiving everything in his body. Inexplicably, Lin Sun felt a touch of resistance in his heart, as if an invisible eye was peeping into his inner secrets. In particular, when this force was about to touch the vicinity of the heart vessel, Lin Sun became agitated, and the spiritual vein in the 4 acupoints of the heart vessel was no longer silent, but became extremely hot. Lin Sun was shocked and realized something was wrong. Buzz! Right at this moment, the door to heaven that stood towering in his sea of consciousness emanated a fluctuation that swiftly spread out. In an instant, it collided with the mysterious force that poured into his body. Boom! Lin Sun only felt that his body was about to explode, like 2 volcanoes colliding, but he was unable to control all this. Whether it was the mysterious force that poured into his body or the power from the gate to heaven, they were all too mysterious. At this moment, they chose his body as the battlefield and collided violently with each other, like enemies meeting each other. What was going on? Lin Sun was shocked. The gate to heaven had been in silence since it was suspended in the sea of consciousness, and Lin Sun had always regarded it as a passage to the heaven-accessing place, so he didn't pay any attention to it. But who would have thought that it would act strangely today? In just a moment, the mysterious force was dispelled, but before Lin Sun could breathe a sigh of relief, he heard a bang. The sound like the sound of nature rang out again. At the same time, the mysterious force appeared again and poured into his body, which was much more powerful than before. The gate to heaven seemed to feel that it was provoked and began to tremble frequently, releasing waves after waves to fight. Boom! Lin Sun only felt that his body was about to explode. The confrontation between the 2 forces made his soul tremble, and his whole body seemed to collapse. What the hell was going on? Chapter 492. Bang! 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 Soon, Lin Sun couldn't care about anything else. The battlefield in his body was so terrible that his meridians, acupoints, muscles, bones, flesh, and blood were like glass that could not withstand heavy blows, making a cracking sound. Clouds of blood mist burst out one after another, and a section of meridians broke down one after another. The unspeakable pain almost made Lin Sun faint. He didn't expect that he would suddenly encounter such a disaster when he was just trying to get on the list. It even wanted to destroy his body. All this happened so suddenly that Lin Sun couldn't help being a little absent-minded at the moment, even though he was as firm as a rock. Was he going to die inexplicably today? It was ridiculous. He didn't have time to refine the armor with spiritual tattoos, kill the enemies of Lin family, or avenge his parents. How could he die like this? Lin Sun was unwilling. His spiritual vein was dug out when he was a child. It was not easy for him to survive. How could he die in such a hurry? After endless hardships, he rebuilt his spiritual vein, reached the unprecedented extreme of sea spirit realm, and had his own way of cultivation. Now, did he have to stop here? Lin Sun was so unwilling. He struggled desperately to resist, but he was powerless to find that his body was like a battlefield occupied and controlled by 2 magical forces. They rushed and killed each other, which made him unable to change at all. Bang, bang, bang. The insides of his body were like beans being fried, cracking sounds coming from inside his body. Even his internal organs were starting to crumble. When his body was about to collapse completely, the gate to heaven in his sea of consciousness began to move and suppress a crystal-clear bead. That was Amrita's St. Pearl, the sacred treasure of Water Barbarian in the 9 branches of Voodoo Barbarian. When Lin Sun was practicing in the Bloodthirsty camp, he killed an assassin from Water Barbarian and accidentally got this bead. It had been silent in his sea of consciousness. On the way to the Forbidden City, Lin Sun was swept away by the underwater whirlpool and passed through the black hole in the void. Then Amrita's St. Pearl played its magical role and made Lin Sun appear in an ancient relic in the depths of the Soul Oblivion Sea. It was also there that Lin Sun took Green Tortoise Turtle, who had been trapped in the relic for many years, away safely with this Amrita's St. Pearl. Lin Sun had thought that this bead was a treasure for traveling through the void and was destined to be of great use in the future. But he never thought that the gate to heaven would make a move and suppress the Amrita's St. Pearl when his body was on the verge of collapse. Boom! If Lin hadn't perfected his star circulation and made his sea of consciousness extremely strong, this blow alone would have been enough to destroy his sea of consciousness. Even so, Lin Sun still had a splitting headache, and his divine soul almost collapsed. But soon, Lin Sun noticed that a cool and warm power flowed out of his sea of consciousness like a clear spring and spread to every inch of his body. At this instant, the meridians, apertures, tendons, and bones that had collapsed inch by inch, the internal organs, flesh, and skin that were on the verge of collapsing seemed as if they'd consumed a peerless divine medicine, and they were repaired at an unbelievable speed and glowed with peerlessly terrifying vitality. The vitality was like a vast ocean, bright like the sun, nourishing the body. Wherever it passed, everything was transforming. In an instant, the boundless pain was replaced by an indescribable comfort. It was like bathing in the hot spring of magic medicine, cleansing oneself and sublimating the body. Lin Sun almost couldn't help moaning. He felt that he was in hell a moment ago, and the next moment, he was in the sky and wanted to become an immortal. It was indescribably wonderful and comfortable. At this time, Lin Sun finally knew the reason. The Amrita's St. Pearl in his sea of consciousness was suppressed by the gate to heaven. The cool power like spring came from the Amrita's St. Pearl. Does this treasure have the magical effect of reviving the dead? Lin Sun was surprised, and he found that at this time, his meridians, acupoints, flesh and blood, bones, internal organs, and other areas were not only restored to their original state, but also undergoing transformation. Strands of miraculous vitality enshrouded him, causing his tendons and bones to become clean and shiny, causing his meridians and acupoints to become brilliant, causing his flesh and skin to seem as if they'd been cleansed and improved, and they carried a strand of dense and exuberant vitality that was burning like a furnace. Incredible! Was this a blessing in disguise? Lin Sun was excited and had a feeling of being reborn. He noticed that the mysterious energy that had surged into his body had been defeated once more and swept away completely. Everything was transforming in a good direction. Dong! But God seemed to deliberately oppose Lin Sun. Before he could carefully perceive the changes in himself, another ancient sound like the sound of nature rang out. At this moment, Lin Sun couldn't help feeling numb. It came again. Without giving him a chance to refuse, a mysterious energy that was even more powerful than before surged into his body, rampaging through his body. And the gate to heaven seemed to be irritated. It buzzed constantly, released rolling waves, and rushed at Lin Sun again. The battle in his body replayed, and it was more intense than the previous 2 times. In just a moment, Lin Sun's body, which had been restored to its original state and become stronger, was once again like a glass bottle, full of cracks and about to collapse completely. The sharp pain made Lin Sun fall into the dark purgatory again, as if he was suffering cruel torture. The wonderful thing was that at the moment when his body was about to collapse and be completely destroyed, the Amrita St. Pearl was ruthlessly suppressed again, releasing the magical essence power and began to repair Lin Sun's body. So Lin Sun returned to heaven from hell. But Lin Sun couldn't be happy anymore. All this was too dangerous, making him suffer a lot. If it continued, he was worried that he would be tortured to the point of collapse. All this was like a reincarnation. Hell and heaven exchanged, destruction and rebirth alternated, and life and death lingered here. If he didn't experience it himself, he would never be able to understand it. Dong, dong, dong. In the following time, the ancient sound of nature kept ringing. Every time it rang, there would be a mysterious force pouring into Lin Sun's body. At the same time, the gate to heaven was constantly fighting with the mysterious force, as if it regarded Lin Sun's body as a forbidden area and couldn't tolerate the mysterious force. And every time Lin Sun's body was on the verge of destruction, it was repaired by the power of the Amrita St. Pearl. Again and again, like forging iron, it made his physical strength transform and sublimate again and again. In the process, Lin Sun didn't notice that behind him, the eyes of the skinny old man had been watching him. It was a pair of eyes as deep as black holes, intertwined with mysterious patterns of Tao, as if they were about to see through all the principles of the world. Is it a blessing in disguise? It seems that I don't have to do it. After a long time, the skinny old man was lost in thought. Lin Sun didn't know how long it had been, which seemed to be as long as a century, or like a battle of life and death. The ancient sound disappeared and no longer rang. In the sea of consciousness, the gate to heaven also returned to silence, majestic and mysterious. Only the Amrita St. Pearl was missing. Lin Sun was stunned, and then he remembered that in the previous encounter, which was like a reincarnation, the Amrita St. Pearl seemed to be completely ground up and became the nourishment of his body. This shocked Lin Sun. It was the sacred weapon of the water barbarian branch. It was of great importance and had the incredible power to travel through the void. How could it be obliterated? Didn't this mean that the power of the Amrita St. Pearl had been completely integrated into his body? Lin Sun hurriedly checked his body. He saw that his body was shrouded by the bright vitality. The meridians, acupoints, blood, flesh, viscera, bones, and tendons were crystal clear, dust-free, like magnificent and holy works of art. His skin was also shining with crystal luster, and the power of life was flowing slowly. It was like going through a baptism of rebirth, so that everything in the body had an amazing transformation. The bones were as white as crystal jade, and the bones were incredibly hard. There was no trace of impurities in the viscera after the infiltration. They were like divine weapons, full of vitality and luster. The meridians and acupoints seemed to be glowing, pure, and tough. As he breathed, the viscera, flesh, and chi in his body moved with the rhythm, making a sonorous sound, which was too wonderful for words. This was not a transformation in cultivation, but a comprehensive sublimation of his own body. It was like a treasured sword that had been tempered 100 times. It was spotless, bright, and radiant, and it possessed unimaginable vitality and intelligence. After being destroyed and repaired many times and consuming a sacred weapon, the Amrita St. Pearl, I built my current body. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. He could feel that although his cultivation had not broken through again, with the sublimation of his body, soul, and cultivation all reached a perfect state. Little guy, you really surprised me. Suddenly, an old voice rang in his ears. For a moment, Lin Sun felt in a trance. The next moment, he appeared on the river of time again, standing on the top of the waves. Lin Sun's face suddenly became gloomy. It was not easy for him to get out of trouble before. Did he have to go through the same experience again? Don't be nervous. The power of the Tao Spirit Tablet has been silent and will not appear again. The old voice sounded again, and then Lin Sun saw a skinny old man beside him. He looked thin, and his eyes were full of vicissitudes of life. He stood there casually without any power, But Lin Sun seemed to see a mountain, standing between heaven and earth, unshakable since ancient times. Suddenly, Lin Sun was shocked and realized that this old man was definitely an old monster with unfathomable strength. "Senior, why did you bring me here again?" Lin Sun couldn't help asking. "Aren't you curious about what happened just now?" The skinny old man's voice was flat, but it immediately attracted Lin Sun's attention. Yes, he just wanted to get on the list. Why did he cause so many incredible changes? Chapter 493. The old man was skinny, with his hands behind his back, standing on the river of time. His turbid eyes seemed to be able to see the mystery at the end of the river. Since the ancient times, so long as one is able to witness this place, then all of them are geniuses that possess the greatest natural talent in attaining the Tao in a certain period of time. Just like those silhouettes you're seeing now, they're the 100 most renowned and formidable young people in the past few thousands of years. The old man spoke slowly, his voice ancient. Their names are engraved here. Only a heaven's favorite that is stronger than any of them can shake their results and remove their names from the spiritual C ranking. Lin Sun listened quietly, looking into the distance. On the waves, the figures were flickering, overflowing with golden light, like the sun. He had already guessed all this before, but he didn't know why he would encounter that life and death experience just now. When you can clearly see the name represented by a figure, it means that your current achievements are more outstanding than this genius in the past. If you can't see it clearly, it means that your ranking can only stop here. Hearing this, Lin Sun suddenly remembered that he had just seen the figure and name of Gu Yunting and knew that he was ranked 64th. But he couldn't see who the figure in front of Gu Yunting was. According to the old man, didn't this mean that he could be ranked 64th on the spiritual C general list? In this way, Gu Yunting's ranking was pushed down to 65th by him, but you are different from them. Suddenly, the old man changed the topic and looked at Lin Sun with his turbid eyes. At that moment, Lin Sun felt that all the secrets in his heart seemed to be seen through, and he felt uncomfortable all over. "Please give me some advice, senior." Lin Sun took a deep breath. According to your talent and potential, if you are completely sensed by the power of the ancient Tao spirit steel, your ranking will definitely not stop here. The old man withdrew his gaze, but your body is rejecting the power of the ancient Tao spirit steel, and you don't want it to perceive all your talent and foundation. His words were earth-shattering. Lin Sun's body stiffened, and he suddenly understood that the mysterious power that poured into his body just now came from the ancient Tao spirit steel. As for the so-called ancient Tao spirit tablet, it was easy to guess that it was the stone tablet that was imprinted with the Spirit C golden ranking and the Spirit C general ranking. It was rumored that this tablet was passed down from an ancient sect in the ancient times. It was a mysterious treasure that was later refined by the headmaster of Green Deer Academy with his supreme magical power and moved it to this place. What Lin Sun couldn't figure out was why the gate to heaven would resist the power of the ancient Tao spirit tablet. Perhaps this is fate. The old man muttered to himself and said something strange. Lin Sun was surprised, but he didn't say anything. He wouldn't reveal the secret of the gate to heaven. You probably don't know this, but as long as you can make it to the ranking of spiritual C and leave your name here, you'll get a chance to enter the realm of ancient desolation and become a core disciple of a mysterious Taoist sect. The old man revealed a secret that caused Lin Sun's heart to tremble. This was indeed a rare opportunity, and to cultivators, it was no less than obtaining a path that was filled with hope. According to what the old man said, the geniuses that have been ranked on the spiritual seed general ranking for thousands of years might have already gone to cultivate in that mysterious Taoist sect. Moreover, it was the treatment of a core disciple. Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but ask, "May I ask, senior, which mysterious Taoist sect did they go to?" "Heaven's Pivot Holy Land." The old man said a name with a strange expression. Even in the realm of ancient desolation, this Taoist sect could be said to be aloof from the world and extremely famous. Rumor has it that a true immortal was born in this Taoist sect, one that shines as brightly as the sun and moon, lives as long as the ages, and is immortal and brilliant. Immortal, Lin Sun gasped in his heart. Cultivating until now, he gradually understood how difficult and ethereal the path of the great Tao was. As for immortality, it was even more unreal, like a dream, and no one could see it. But in the realm of ancient desolation and the holy ground of heaven's pivot, there were actually rumors about immortals, and this was too shocking. Even if it was merely a rumor, it was sufficient to prove how strong the holy ground of heaven's pivot was. Unfortunately, your great Tao is destined to have no fate with the holy ground of heaven's pivot. Although the old man said this, there wasn't a trace of regret in his tone. This caused Lin Sun to be stunned, and he acutely noticed that the old man seemed to be very gratified to see an anomaly like him appear. The old man was silent for a long time, and then he suddenly sighed softly. He looked at Lin Sun and said, "Little fellow, you have too many secrets, and even I can't see through them. It's difficult to predict whether it's a blessing or a curse. But one thing can be foreseen. If you have a chance to enter the realm of ancient desolation one day, remember not to come into contact with the people of the holy ground of heaven's pivot, because it'll absolutely be a great disaster for you." Lin Sun was shocked in his heart. A great disaster? Could it be related to the rejection of the ancient tablet of Tao's spirit by the gate to heaven? Lin Sun vaguely felt that his guess was definitely correct, but he couldn't figure out the reason because he didn't know what all this meant. You'll understand when the time comes. But in Xiao Empire, you don't have to worry about it for the time being. The old man seemed to see through Lin Sun's doubts, so he couldn't help smiling, and his voice became gentle. "Thank you for your advice, Senior." Lin Sun cupped his hands. "Remember, don't mention what happened today to others. No matter how many questions you have, you can't reveal a word. Be sure to keep it in mind," the old man exhorted. Lin Sun promised seriously, and then suddenly asked, "May I know your name, Senior?" The old man stared at Lin Sun with deep eyes. "You've already guessed it, so why ask again?" Lin Sun was finally moved, and his black eyes were full of surprise. He did guess it, but he didn't expect that on the first day of his return to Green Deer School, he would alarm the mysterious old man, the dean of Green Deer School. When Lin Sun woke up, he felt like he had a dream and stood there in a daze. It was just a test, but he inadvertently learned many secrets and saw the true face of the dean of Green Deer School. This made Lin Sun realize that he had indeed made a big noise today. At least he didn't expect that the rejection of the perception of the ancient tablet of Tao's spirit by the gate to heaven would cause so many things. Heaven's pivot holy land. In the end, Lin Sun firmly remembered the name of this mysterious orthodoxy. The so-called catastrophe of the dean made Lin Sun instinctively vigilant. The vision disappeared? What on earth happened just now? A wave of surprised and bewildered voices sounded out, and it was the nearby Shi Yu, Ning Ming, and the others, as well as the martial Tao courtyard disciples that had awoken from their blank state of mind. Everyone was a little confused. Obviously, they didn't notice what happened just now. This must be the trick of the dean. Look, this guy is still ranked 4th on the Spirit Sea Golden List. Someone laughed and found that the golden light representing Lin Sun's result on the Spirit Sea Golden List was still at the 4th place. Sure enough, we won the bet. Lin Sun, how can you be so arrogant? I told you earlier that you couldn't make it, but you still talked nonsense about being ranked 1st on the Spirit Sea Golden List. Now, what do you have to say? You lost. Quickly take out your points. The disciples of martial arts courtyard shouted excitedly. They were very happy to see Lin Sun lose the bet and make a fool of himself in public. Shi Yu, Ning Ming, and the others' faces were a little ugly. They couldn't figure out why the vision was so grand and why Lin Sun's ranking remained at the same level. It was simply inexplicable. Could it be that something happened? You guys, what's there to be proud of? Didn't you see that Lin Sun's ranking has already reached the 4th place? Is such a result something you can mock? Ning Ming shouted loudly. Indeed, to be ranked 4th on the Spirit Sea Golden List, one could be said to be one of the top existences in martial arts courtyard. Not everyone could have such a result. What a joke. Lin Sun isn't ranked first. He has already lost. This is the truth. Are we wrong? Someone snorted coldly. Cut the crap. You were so arrogant just now, but now you can't afford to lose? Shame. The others also shouted loudly. Ning Ming, Sure Yu, and the others were angry, but they couldn't refute it. Indeed, according to the agreement between Lin Sun and them, he had already lost. But at this moment, Lin Sun turned his head and asked with a smile, Don't worry, it's not over yet. I remember there are still many friends who haven't joined the bet, right? Now that you think I will lose, why don't you join in? Don't worry, if I really lose, I promise I won't go back on my word. Ning Ming, Sure Yu, and the others' eyes lit up. They realized that Lin Sun might still have a backup plan. This was something they were looking forward to. The disciples of martial arts courtyard were also stunned. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would still be so fearless at this time. This surprised them, but when they saw the ranking on the stone tablet didn't change, they were relieved. You're deliberately mystifying. I'll bet with you. Immediately, a young man stood out and took out his identity nameplate with a sneer. Me too. Some other students also joined in the bet. It was no wonder that they were so confident. After so long, Lin Sun's ranking hadn't changed. It would be difficult for him to make a comeback. Seeing this, Lin Sun's smile became more and more brilliant. Without another word, he pressed his right hand on the stone tablet again. Don't you want to give up? Do you want to try again? Ridiculous. A student roared with laughter. But before his voice died away, he saw the golden light that represented Lin Sun's result flashed lightly, and then he reached the top in one leap. The speed was so fast that it was like a flash of golden light. Zhao Jingwen, who was originally in the first place, fell to the second place. Zui Yujing, who was originally in the second place, fell to the third place. The students of martial arts courtyard were dumbfounded. They were all eager to fight and thinking about how to divide the spoils of winning from Lin Sun. Who would have thought that the ranking would change dramatically with a flash in front of them? Some students even couldn't believe it and couldn't help rubbing their eyes. But the result was cruel. The first place was indeed occupied by Lin Sun's result. Chapter 494. Sure Yu and Ning Ming also gasped. Lin Sun was too ruthless. Had he been holding back his strength just now and waited for all the fish to take the bait before he started to exert his strength? How insidious. They looked at Lin Sun with a strange look in their eyes. In order to get points, Lin Sun was really black-hearted. However, they had wronged Lin Sun. He really didn't dig a pit this time. He just took advantage of the situation. What was even weirder was that those students of martial arts courtyard foolishly jumped in. Who could be blamed for that? It's impossible. Someone shouted angrily. What? Can't afford to lose? Lin Sun didn't bother to talk nonsense and began to collect the identity nameplates. If you dare to run, don't blame me for getting angry. A student in the distance who intended to slip away was shocked by Lin Sun's words. His face suddenly darkened and he reluctantly handed over his identity nameplate. You cheated. Someone was still unwilling to give up and screamed. Those points were accumulated with painstaking efforts. Now, they had to give them away. How could they be reconciled? Cut the crap. Let me see if you have the guts. Lin Sun snatched the identity nameplate, which made the latter tremble with anger. He wanted to fight back, but he held back in the end. Even the top figures like Lan Yu and Jin Zhulu were no match for Lin Sun. How could he dare to challenge Lin Sun? In the end, Lin Sun got more than 10 identity nameplates. Adding up all the identity nameplates he won from Lan Yu and Jin Zhulu, he had nearly 4,000 points. Lin Sun was a little surprised by the abundant harvest. According to his calculation, now that he was ranked first on Spiritual Sea Golden List, he could also get 2,000 points as a reward. In total, he had more than 6,000 points, which was more than enough to take the stairway assessment. Thanks a lot, everyone. In the end, Lin Sun waved his hand with a smile and left Spiritual Sea Peak with Sure Yu and Ning Ming. Those students of martial arts courtyard were so angry that they almost vomited blood. They wanted to cry, but had no tears. Whoosh! Not long after, a man in white came to Spiritual Sea Peak. He was tall and slender, like an exiled immortal, and his eyes were as bright as stars. Gu Yunting. He stared fixedly at the name that was ranked first on the Spirit Sea Gold rankings, and he couldn't help but be stunned. He seemed to be slightly puzzled. The phenomenon of the heavens and the earth from before was so grand and profound, yet why wasn't this person able to leave his name on the Spirit Sea Immortal rankings? After a moment of silence, Gu Yunting turned around and left swiftly. Not long after, many people arrived at the Spirit Sea Peak. There were teachers of Green Deer School and many students. When they saw the name of the first place on the Spirit Sea Gold list, they couldn't help but be shocked. Lin Sun. It was actually him. Today, Green Deer Academy was destined to not be peaceful. After disappearing for 2 months, Lin Sun had returned in a domineering manner and defeated Shi Yunpeng, Shui Yun, Jin Zhulu, Lan Yu, and the others in the training field, causing a sensation among the teachers and students of the Martial Dao Courtyard. His unbridled attitude, his insidious fighting methods of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, made people gnash their teeth in hatred, but at the same time, they were secretly shocked and fearful. This fellow is black-hearted and sinister, purposely pretending to be a pig to trick others. He's simply shameless. Awesome. Even Lan Yu took the initiative to admit defeat. Lin Sun has already surpassed most of the top talents in terms of martial cultivation. This was everyone's evaluation of Lin Sun. Those who hated him scolded him for being insidious, too black-hearted, and not having the demeanor of a top talent at all. And those who admired him were generous in their praise and extremely revered his strength. But this was not the end. When everyone was speculating how powerful Lin Sun's fighting capacity was, an explosive news once again swept across Green Deer School. Lin Sun had climbed to the top of the Spirit Sea Gold list in one fell swoop, suppressing all the top talents. This was too terrifying. The Spirit Sea Gold rankings represented a supreme honor, and the names that were able to be ranked on it represented the 100 most outstanding geniuses in the Martial Dao Courtyard. But now, Lin Sun, a young spiritual tattooist of the Spiritual Tattoo Courtyard, had appeared in a domineering manner and set foot on the first place of the Spirit Sea Gold list. How could people not be shocked? Who could imagine that Lin Sun's martial cultivation had already stood at the peak of the Spirit Sea realm? Damn it! Lin Sun is not even a student of the Martial Dao Courtyard, but now he ranks first on the Spirit Sea Gold list. Isn't he bullying our Martial Dao Courtyard? The students of the Martial Dao Courtyard couldn't sit still, and they were extremely sad and indignant. Lin Sun is extraordinary. Since ancient times, who in the other courtyards dared to be like Lin Sun and directly occupy the first place of the Spirit Sea Gold list after violently beating up the top talents of the Martial Dao Courtyard? How can the students of the Martial Dao Courtyard endure this? Those talents of the Martial Dao Courtyard are all extremely arrogant and haughty. After this lesson, perhaps they can turn over a new leaf. In the other courtyards, some students were excited. They thought Lin Sun was simply an incomparably ferocious person. Only when the news that Gu Yunting had set foot on the Spirit Sea General list came out did the students of the Martial Dao Courtyard become excited. After 5 years of closed-door cultivation, senior brother Gu Yunting has come out and surpassed the Spirit Sea Gold list and entered the Spirit Sea General list. He's on par with the most outstanding talents in the past thousands of years. This is simply a miracle. Ha 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 ha. No matter how arrogant Lin Sun is, he can only be the first on the Spirit Sea Gold list. Compared to senior brother Gu Yunting, he's like a pearl that's as small as a grain of rice, and he's bound to be unable to compete with the sun and moon. A single Gu Yunting had resolved the aggrieved feelings of all the students of the Martial Dao Courtyard, and it caused them to be overjoyed and excited. No wonder the phenomenon of the heavens and the earth descended today. So it turns out that Gu Yunting has ascended into the Spirit Sea General list. Gu Yunting with the golden body of Dao Flame. He has already surpassed the current geniuses, and he's on par with the most dazzling geniuses that have appeared in the past thousands of years. Even the instructors and students of the other courtyards of Azure Deer Academy couldn't help but exclaim with admiration for Gu Yunting when they found out about this. This person was too heaven-defying. He was like a peerless genius that caused others to be unable to envy him because he was too extraordinary. Who do all of you think is stronger between Lin Sun and Gu Yunting? Of course it's Gu Yunting. Lin Sun is only the first on the Spirit Sea Gold list, whereas Gu Yunting has already surpassed and stepped foot on the Spirit Sea General list. You can't say it like that. I remember that Lin Sun is only 16 this year, whereas Gu Yunting is already over 20 years old. There's quite a big difference between the two. If Lin Sun is given a few more years, he'll absolutely be able to surpass Gu Yunting. What a joke. Young age only represents potential. In the current world, competition is a competition of cultivation. Lin Sun is inferior in the end, and it's bound to be difficult for him to catch up to Gu Yunting. In Azure Deer Academy, many people were comparing Lin Sun and Gu Yunting, and it even caused an intense discussion to arise. But no matter what, Lin Sun and Gu Yunting have become the two people that receive the most attention in Azure Deer Academy today. At the same time, another piece of news spread out in Forbidden City. Lin Sun, who had vanished for 2 months, walked out from his closed-door cultivation, and on that very day, he started a massacre and annihilated all the disciples of the Lin clan's branch family. And he even domineeringly captured the two geniuses of the younger generation, Zuyang and Qin Xing. Instantly, Forbidden City fell into an uproar. Lin Sun was familiar to everyone. He'd once done many great things that caused a great commotion, and his name shook Forbidden City. But when everyone thought that he was doomed to suffer a lot of suppression and disasters because he offended the royal family of the empire, he made a strong attack. On the first day he came out, he set off a bloody scene and killed those who dared to provoke and fight against heart-cleansing Peak in an absolute manner. Lin Sun is really cruel and merciless. Isn't he afraid of death? Even Zuyang and Qin Xing were captured by him. Isn't he worried about the revenge from the Zhuo and Qin families? I knew Lin Sun wouldn't swallow it. He even dared to force Marquis Ling Tian to kneel down and apologize in front of all the bigwigs in the Imperial Palace. Is there anything in the world that he doesn't dare to do? In the Forbidden City, there were discussions everywhere. After 2 months, Lin Sun returned to people's sight in a bloody and powerful manner, which surprised everyone. No one expected that he dared to do this. This was tantamount to completely offending the 3 collateral forces of Lin clan and completely offending the Zhuo and Qin families. Heart-cleansing Peak is in a precarious situation now, but Lin Sun still doesn't know how to restrain himself. He's playing with fire. Even a rabbit will bite when it's cornered. I'm afraid that Lin Sun has been driven to the end of his rope. He has to take action. Alas, his opponents are not only the Zhuo and Qin families, but also the royal family of the empire. I think it won't be long before Lin Sun is doomed to suffer and Heart-Cleansing Peak is doomed to be destroyed. Indeed, no matter how powerful he is just a young man after all. He doesn't know how terrible the forces of those superior families are. It's easier to kill him than to pinch an ant. The Forbidden City was the capital of the empire. Lin Sun attracted the attention and discussion of the whole city on the day he came out. It could be seen that Lin Sun's fame had accumulated to a level that no one could ignore, whether it was good or bad. On the same day, the news that Lin Sun entered Green Deer School, beat a group of talents, and ranked first in Sea Spirit Gold list also spread to the Forbidden City. At the same time, the news that Lin Sun captured Zuyang and Qin Xing and killed the collateral clansmen of Lin Clan also spread to Green Deer School. Without exception, it caused an uproar again. All kinds of uproars and discussions made Lin Sun the most eye-catching person in the Forbidden City today. This kind of treatment was rare in the world and in the past years. After all, apart from his identity and strength, Lin Sun was only a 16-year-old boy now, but he could stir up a storm in the whole city. On this point alone, almost no one among his peers could compare with him. Lin Sun didn't know about this. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care much. He just wanted to make a scene, no matter if it was a bad reputation or a good one, as long as it was big enough. Spiritual Affairs Hall Lin Sun came with a pile of identity nameplates. He wanted to exchange them for points and then began to prepare for the stairway assessment. Chapter 495. When he walked out of the spiritual affairs hall, Lin Sun felt a little pain in his heart. He finally understood that choosing the second method required him to pay the price of 1,000 points. No wonder so few people would choose to do it alone. 1,000 points was an astronomical figure that would make most students stop in their tracks. Fortunately, after deducting 1,000 points, Lin Sun had more than 5,000 points on his nameplate, which was enough for him to pass the stairway assessment. It was getting late. Lin Sun returned to his residence and decided to go to the Stairway Mountain tomorrow. The so-called Stairway Mountain was a forbidden place in Green Deer School. Only students with 5,000 points were qualified to set foot on it. It was said that the Stairway Mountain contained the trace of the Great Way, which was mysterious and unpredictable. Whoever could climb to the top of the stairway would reach the sky in one step and master the power of the Great Way. The word sky here also referred to the Tao Insight Realm, because only the strong men of Tao Insight Realm could master the power of the Great Way. This was common knowledge. Late at night, Lin Sun sat cross-legged in his room, meditating quietly. Today, his cultivation had reached the unprecedented extreme of Sea Spirit Realm, which was perfect and flawless. Because of the rebirth of the spiritual veins, his originally incomparably strong cultivation became more and more tyrannical, as immeasurable as the abyss. If it was seen by other practitioners, they would be stunned because there was almost no one in Sea Spirit Realm who had such a strong foundation like Lin Sun. In terms of soul cultivation, Lin Sun had also reached the consummation of star circulation. In his sea of consciousness, the stars shone brightly, and the dreamy starlight illuminated his soul. The next level was moon shift, which belonged to a more profound level of soul cultivation. This level was based on refining the moon of soul. When the wonderful image of the full moon in the sky was condensed, it could be regarded as consummation. Lin Sun planned to practice moon shift after breaking through the Tao Insight Realm. Because in Sea Spirit Realm, his soul power had reached the limit, and it was difficult for him to transform again due to the influence of his body and cultivation. What really surprised Lin Sun was the change of his physique. After experiencing the reincarnation cycle of destruction and rebirth in the ancient Tao Spirit Tablet, his physique had been transformed and sublimated again and again. In the process, the Amrita Saint Pearl, a sacred tool, was also completely refined and integrated with his physical strength. Now Lin Sun suspected that he could kill a Sea Spirit Realm practitioner with one punch only with his physical strength. My cultivation, soul, and physique have all reached the perfection realm. As the saying goes, the three realms give birth to all things. When I break through to the Tao Insight Realm, I'll be able to obtain achievements that far surpass other practitioners. Lin Sun was enlightened. The Heavenly Insight Realm was a realm that was completely different from the Spirit Sea Realm. Only by attaining this realm would one be addressed as a great cultivator, because only those at the Heavenly Insight Realm were able to comprehend and grasp the energy of grand Tao concepts, control wind, lightning, earth, and fire, and control the world. With a raise of their hand, they were able to create storms, incinerate mountains, and boil oceans. There are many kinds of descriptions of Tao insight. Some people said that when one reached this realm, he could have insight into the Tao and reason of heaven and earth, so it was called Tao insight. Some people said that Tao insight was a manifestation of the transformation of cultivation. It was like opening up a world in one's body, building the root of grand Tao, and having the qualification to seek longevity. But in any case, Tao Insight Realm was indeed a mysterious realm. Since ancient times, only 1 in 10,000 people could set foot in this realm. It was too difficult, because Tao Insight Realm was about comprehending the grand Tao of heaven and earth. Without talent and opportunity, it was destined to be difficult to grasp in a lifetime. For example, in the big forces in the Forbidden City today, the strongman of Tao Insight Realm was absolutely an indispensable heavyweight, which was enough to deter one side. On Heart Cleansing Peak, Zhu Laosan and Lin Zhong were at this level. Without them, Heart-cleansing peak would be in a more dangerous situation. From this, it could be seen how powerful the deterrent of Tao Insight Realm was. Today, Lin Sun was only one step away from this realm, but this step was more difficult than climbing the sky. It cannot be broken through by closing the door, but it needed opportunity, tempering, and seeking calmly. As far as Lin Sun knew, there were many amazing people in the world today who failed to break through and set foot in Tao Insight Realm in their whole life. It was not because their foundation was not strong enough, but because they lacked a chance and opportunity to break through. The same was true for Lin Sun now. He was also waiting for an opportunity to break through. The next morning, Ladder Mountain. This place was located in the depths of Green Deer School. It was a forbidden area. Almost no figure could be seen in ordinary days. Amidst the rising morning mist, a tall and handsome figure could be vaguely seen walking over. He wore a moon-white robe, and his long black hair was casually tied behind his head, revealing a handsome and warm face. His black eyes were deep and clear, and his entire person had an otherworldly aura. It was Lin Sun. It was quiet all around. The mountains were covered in the morning mist. In the distance, it was Ladder Mountain, where the celestial ladder test was about to start. "Young man, this is a forbidden area. Don't come any closer." There was a thatched cottage in the distance. In front of the cottage, an old man with unkempt hair and beard was cooking. The stove was burning fiercely, and the beast meat was being cooked in the iron pot. The aroma filled the air and made people want to eat. When he noticed Lin Sun's arrival, the old man said quickly without raising his head. He stared at the beast meat in the iron pot and smacked his lips as if he was already hungry. "Senior, I'm here to climb the ladder to heaven," Lin Sun said casually. He was looking at the old man. He was dirty and looked very sloppy. There was no strong aura around him, so he did not look like a reclusive master. However, Lin Sun did not dare to underestimate him. Being able to guard the ladder mountain, this sloppy old man must have an extraordinary background. Oh, in the past hundreds of years, many students have come to climb the ladder to heaven, but none of them succeeded. "Young man, I advise you to leave. Don't waste your points." Speaking of this, the old man suddenly laughed. In the past, 5,000 points could be exchanged for a piece of the heart of a heaven-rank monster. Unfortunately, it's hard to find such a monster now. Lin Sun was stunned. A heaven-rank monster? That was a terrifying existence comparable to the Tao Insight Realm, or even the reincarnation developing realm. Had this old man eaten the heart of a heaven-rank monster before? Lin Sun immediately stopped thinking and said seriously, "Senior, I must climb the ladder to heaven this time." The old man seemed to be a little impatient. He waved his hand and said, "You really won't give up until you hit the wall. Fine, I won't stop you. Give me your identity nameplate." Lin Sun handed over his identity nameplate and continued to walk away. The complete sea spirit realm? Hey, what a pity. If I don't have the qualification of the Supreme Master in this realm, I'm doomed to return in failure. The old man glanced at Lin Sun's back and shook his head disapprovingly. He took out a bowl and chopsticks, scooped out the beast meat in the iron pot, and began to eat heartily. "Huh, why is there another one?" Suddenly, the old man was stunned. He frowned and looked into the distant morning mist. He saw a man in snow-white clothes, who was as transcendent as a banished immortal, floating towards him. "Gu Yunting, are you also here to climb the ladder to heaven?" The old man chewed the beast meat and asked vaguely. He was satisfied with the food. Gu Yunting nodded and took out his identity nameplate. Then he continued to move forward without saying a word. "What's wrong with you today?" The old man frowned and then shook his head. He continued to eat the meat, as if the meat in the bowl was more important than the sky falling down. The ladder to heaven was like a giant halberd, piercing into the sky. The rocks were like iron, and there was not even a blade of grass growing. It gave people an unshakable momentum. Standing under it, one could clearly see that a stone path went straight up to the top of the mountain. It was steep and dangerous, just like a straight ladder. This was the ladder to heaven. It was said that every step of the stone ladder was branded with the traces of the Great Way. It was full of unpredictable power. Walking on it was more terrible than going up a mountain of swords and a sea of fire. Since ancient times, very few people could set foot on the top of the ladder to heaven because it was too difficult. Even the practitioners of sea spirit realm struggled on it. However, if one could really reach the top of the ladder to heaven, he could get great benefits, which could be called a great opportunity. Lin Sun took a deep breath and stepped on it without hesitation. Before he came here, he had learned that every step on the ladder to heaven was dangerous. One careless step could lead to ruthless suppression and elimination. But in order to get the horn of one-legged ox, Lin Sun had to pass this test. Step. When he stepped on the first stone step, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. As if the stars had moved, a raging sea of fire emerged. In the sea of fire, fierce birds were flying in the fire, emitting a terrible momentum that could incinerate everything. The brand of fire. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and judged that it was derived from the trace of the essence of fire on the ladder to heaven. Although it was not real, its power was extremely terrible. Swish! Without giving Lin Sun more time to think, a ferocious bird spread its wings, wrapped in thousands of layers of fire waves, whistling over. The blazing fire waves melted the void, full of destructive power. The test began. Lin Sun did not retreat, but moved forward. He ran his cultivation all over his body. His whole body was like a bright cyan sun, rushing to the sky and punching out. Boom! The fist force was like a waterfall. In an instant, the fierce bird was smashed into pieces, turned into a rain of light, and disappeared. But in just a moment, fierce birds rushed out of the sea of fire one after another. They were all bathed in the monstrous fire, making harsh cries and overwhelming attacks on Lin Sun. Come on! Lin Sun's black hair was flying. He ran the 9 strikes for shaking heaven and launched a fierce fight above the sea of fire. Flames were steaming and fierce birds were flying. It was like a fiery purgatory. The power of incineration filled the universe. The scene was extremely horrible. At the same time, at the foot of the ladder to heaven, Gu Yunting in white arrived. When he saw Lin Sun standing on the first stone step in the distance, he could not help but frown slightly. Immediately, he walked over and began to climb the ladder from Lin Sun's side. Chapter 496. The angry fire burned the sky, and the ferocious birds danced in the air. All the traces of the Tao of Fire were derived. The Tao of Fire was natural and violent. Lin Sun ran the 9 strikes for shaking heaven to fight fiercely. His whole body was covered with light, cyan divine light, and his handsome figure was unshakable, flashing between the heaven and the earth. In just a moment, the sea of fire collapsed, the ferocious birds were shattered, and everything turned into a rain of fire, drifting between heaven and earth. The air was full of the breath of the Tao of Fire. Lin Sun stopped to meditate, but soon he frowned. The Tao of Fire was clearly in front of him, but it was unrestrained and untraceable. In the end, the Tao of Fire disappeared, and all the illusions were silent. It seems that it is really difficult to comprehend and master the power of the Tao without the opportunity to break through the Tao insight realm. Lin Sun frowned. Immediately, he was surprised to find that there was a figure standing on the side of the path in front of him. The figure was Gu Yunting. Did he also come to climb the ladder to heaven? Lin Sun noticed that this person had set foot on the second stone step at this time. Obviously, although he followed Lin Sun, he had caught up. Do you want to compete with me? Lin Sun shook his head. He didn't have such a competitive mind. It was not that he was afraid, but he didn't want to be distracted by such things. After truly experiencing the mystery of the celestial ladder, Lin Sun suddenly had a strong ambition in his heart. He wanted to try to comprehend and master the power of a conception in sea spirit realm. A long time ago, when he performed the Tianyuan saber play, he displayed a kind of momentum of heaven and earth with the Tao of reaching for the stars and the moon-fetching style, which contained the breath of the Tao. But it was the power integrated into the saber play. Although it could be controlled, the Tao of heaven didn't belong to Lin Sun. It was just a kind of control of power. Now, the ladder to heaven was densely covered with traces of the Tao, which could derive the real essence of the Tao. Lin Sun naturally didn't want to miss such a rare opportunity. If he rushed to ascend the stairway to heaven merely for the sake of competing with Gu Yunting, then he would undoubtedly miss this fortuitous encounter. Without hesitation, Lin Sun continued to step on the second stone step. Suddenly, another illusion of the Tao of heaven appeared. This was a world of greenwood. Verdant trees towered into the sky. Branches and leaves covered the void, steaming with incomparable vitality. Concept of wood. Wood represented life, and it was endless. It was a type of intent of the five elements, and it was profound and unfathomable. According to rumor, some great cultivators at the heavenly abode realm that grasped wood intent were able to possess boundless combat strength that grew and multiplied endlessly, causing them to be like an immortal body that was extremely formidable. Moreover, they could communicate with the essence of plants and absorb the vitality of the world. They were the closest to nature, so it was easier for them to cultivate compared to other cultivators. Rumble, suddenly, vines as thick as buckets rushed out of the earth like dancing pythons, covering the sky and suppressing Lin Sun. Whoosh! The seemingly soft vine leaves could easily tear through the void and were filled with terrifying penetrative power. Lin Sun executed the ice drake steps. His figure was illusory as he shuttled back and forth. His fist force was like a huge dragon, shattering the heavens and shattering the earth. It charged in all directions and smashed all the vines into pieces, causing debris to fly in all directions. To everyone's surprise, the shattered vines healed as soon as they fell to the ground, and then they shot into the sky once more. This was the intent of wood. It grew and multiplied endlessly. Unless one could suppress it with absolute strength, it couldn't be killed at all. After 15 minutes, Lin Sun completely smashed the intent of wood with the superimposed threefold fist force and turned it into a colorful rain of light. He held his breath, cut off the distractions in his mind, and meditated quietly. It was a pity that he clearly felt that he could grasp the essence of the domain of wood, but he always missed it. It was like there was a world between him and it. He could only see it, but he couldn't comprehend it. But Lin Sun was not discouraged. Since ancient times, very few people could control the power of the intent of Great Way in Sea Spirit Realm. Even if there were, most of them were like legends that couldn't be proved true. It could be seen that it was not only difficult to achieve this step in Sea Spirit Realm, but also almost hopeless. It was like a barrier in a realm. Without the qualification of Heavenly Abode Realm, it was difficult to break this barrier in comprehending the Great Way. To put it simply, this was a hopeless road. Many amazing cultivators had tried in the past, but they all failed in the end. Lin Sun didn't know this, so he naturally didn't have a deep understanding of it. Perhaps his action at this time was really because the ignorant were fearless. However, this was cultivation. Only by seeking and exploring could one verify one's great way. In front of the ladder mountain, the beast meat in the iron pot was completely eaten up. The sloppy old man smacked his lips with satisfaction. He lay lazily on the blue stone in front of the hut, squinting at the distance with indescribable satisfaction. "Junior brother, what do you think of those two little guys?" Suddenly, a weathered voice sounded. A skinny old man had come to the front of the hut with his hands behind his back, staring at the ladder mountain in the distance. If Lin Sun was here, he would definitely recognize that the skinny old man was the dean of Green Deer School. "Hey, even you are alarmed. Do you still need to ask me?" The sloppy old man took out a toothpick to pick his teeth. It seemed that he was not surprised that the dean would come in person. "I want to know your opinion," the dean asked. "That boy in the white robe should be the guy who rushed into the Sea Spirit General list yesterday. If I'm right, he is here to break through the realm and is likely to succeed." The sloppy old man's voice was lazy, as if he was talking about something very casual. Such a young man will enter the ancient desolation realm to cultivate sooner or later. What about the other one? The dean looked indifferent and was not surprised, because he knew Gu Yunting's current potential better than the sloppy old man. "Well, I don't see anything mysterious." The sloppy old man's answer was very perfunctory. He seemed to be too lazy to pay attention to it. Look again, the dean said, seeming to care about the sloppy old man's opinion. The sloppy old man was a little surprised. He glanced at the dean and said, "Is there anything special about this boy?" He originally had the opportunity to leave his name on the Sea Spirit General list, but in the end, he refused this opportunity. In the thousands of years since I brought the ancient tablet of Tao Spirit to the school, such a thing has never happened. The dean said casually. What? With a whoosh, the sloppy old man sat up straight, and a trace of surprise appeared on his lazy face. You mean, this boy has the power that the heavens pivot holy ground desperately wants? He obviously knew some secrets. The dean nodded. That's right, the power that can repel and isolate the ancient tablet of Tao Spirit is what the heavens pivot holy ground desires the most. I only heard that this power was brought into the Xiao Empire from the ancient Desolation realm many years ago, but I never thought that it might be true. The slovenly old man's expression changed indeterminately. After a short while, he suddenly laughed and said, "In that case, do you intend to give this kid to the heavens pivot sacred grounds, or do you intend to make a move yourself and take that power from this kid for yourself?" That smile actually seemed a little sinister and horrifying. The dean said indifferently, "If it was in the past, I might do that, but now I just want to watch from the sidelines and avoid this karma." The sloppy old man sneered. "Are you willing? Have you forgotten who forced you out of the ancient Desolation realm?" The dean's expression remained unchanged, and he said, "It was I who proposed the matter back then. Otherwise, do you think I have no chance to return in these thousands of years?" The sloppy old man still didn't believe it, and he sneered, "I don't believe it. You must have other plans." The dean frowned and sighed after a while. "You don't understand. I was defeated back then, and I was convinced of my defeat. I can't blame anyone. But you're not willing. Otherwise, why would you care so much about this boy today?" The sloppy old man said word by word. As he spoke, he looked at the sky ladder mountain in the distance. He could clearly see that Lin Sun's figure was walking up one stone step after another in a slow manner. On the other side, Gu Yunting was striding as if he was flying, and he was as light as an immortal. He had already arrived halfway up the mountain, far surpassing Lin Sun. If you plan to cultivate this boy and take back what you lost, then you'll be disappointed. Because I really don't see what's worth paying attention to this little guy. This time, the dean fell into silence and said after a long time, "I have no such plan. This little guy has too many causes and effects." Do you still remember Lin Wenjing and Luo Qingxuan? The sloppy old man narrowed his eyes. The first and second place of the nation test 17 years ago. The dean nodded. Lin Wenjing's grandfather was Lin Daochun, a life-death realm king. He died on the frontier battlefield, but how he died has always been a mystery. And Luo Qingxuan is also not simple. It is said that she was born in a humble and poor family. Her parents died early, and she had no relatives or friends. But her talent is amazing and unparalleled. Moreover, she is intelligent and outstanding. At that time, you also said that it was not normal. The sloppy old man seemed to be lost in memory and nodded after a long time. I have a deep impression of Luo Qingxuan. Judging from her aura, she can't be cultivated by the poor. Speaking of this, he couldn't help frowning. But they all died more than 10 years ago. Why do you still mention these things? The dean said indifferently, Lin Sun is their child. The sloppy old man was stunned, and a strange look appeared on his face. It turned out to be this little guy. When he was born, he was accompanied by the devouring abyss spiritual vein, which shocked the whole forbidden city. But I never thought that he could still live until now, after the devouring abyss spiritual vein was dug out. If Yun Qingbai of the heaven-reaching sword sect knew about it, there would be a good show. The dean said indifferently, someone saved him at that time. The sloppy old man frowned. Who dares to save people in the hands of Yun Qingbai? Lu Boya, the dean said name. It's him. The sloppy old man was shocked. He suddenly stood up and looked surprised. The origin of this old guy is very mysterious. The dean nodded. In this way, Lin Sun has a lot of troubles. The death of his great-grandfather and parents are all involved in some terrible causes and effects. And he has a relationship with Lu Boya. It's really complicated. The sloppy old man was lost in thought. So, I can't entrust him with the things of that year. Chapter 497. The stairway to heaven had a total of 99 steps. It contained the number of the Great Way, and it was branded with the traces of the Great Way. Walking on it, every step was filled with killing intent. Dawn. The golden blades poured down from the sky, dazzling and tearing the heaven and the earth. But in just a moment, they were all smashed by a pair of fists and turned into a rain of light. Lin Sun meditated and finally sighed. Difficult, difficult, difficult. The Great Way was mysterious and unfathomable, almost impossible to comprehend and control. The 39th step forced me to use 5 layers of fist energy. I'm afraid the higher I go, the more difficult it will be to climb. Lin Sun thought for a while. He glanced and saw a flash of white clothes at a very high position. It was quite eye-catching, like a flying immortal. Gu Yunting had reached the 80th step. Lin Sun was stunned. Then he withdrew his gaze and concentrated on the path under his feet. As time went by, he climbed up step by step, broke through layers of Great Way illusions, and saw various different Great Way concepts. There were traces of blazing and wanton fire, traces of endless vitality of wood, sharp and unparalleled Golden Way concept, and every kind of Great Way concept represented a kind of aura, blending between heaven and earth, filling the space between the earth and the sky, and it was indescribably wonderful. The changing of the 4 seasons, the changing of life and death, the rising and falling of the sun and the setting of the moon, the alternation of day and night, the rise and fall of the tide. All things had spirits. Spirits were the basis of law, and law was the rhythm of Tao. Tao is nameless and derived from all things. It went round and round and in order, deducing all things. In short, it was called the Great Way of Heaven, but it was easy to know and difficult to do. Seeing and knowing were one thing, and trying to comprehend and control were another. The two were like the difference between heaven and earth, completely different. Just like now, Lin Sun had been trying to comprehend and control it, and he had used all means, but so far he had gained nothing. This was still on the stairway to heaven, which was full of traces of Great Way. If it was in the outside world, the Great Way was illusory, and it would only be more difficult to perceive and find. This was also the reason why the strong of Tao Insight realm seemed so rare. The road of Great Way was vague and boundless. Since ancient times, no one knew how many practitioners had stopped here and died with regrets. The so-called Great Way buried all corpses. This was absolutely not an exaggeration. It was like a natural barrier that trapped most of the cultivators in the world, and they were unable to climb and surmount it. On the other hand, there was a limit to one's lifespan. If one was unable to break through, then one would naturally be unable to escape the pain of aging, sickness, and death. In the end, one would transform into a pile of dirt and sink into the annals of time. Boom! The surging ocean surged, condensing into spears, halberds, spirit swords, blades, and other different forms. Water glistened as it charged through the air. Lin Sun moved like lightning, using ice dragon steps, fighting fiercely above the sea. His fists were dazzling, tearing the void apart. Rumble, there were explosions everywhere. A rain of light shot out, and waves swept across. It wasn't long before the surging concept of water transformed into WIRMS, ferocious birds, yikshas, sea spirits, and various other terrifying living beings, and their might grew even more terrifying. This was the 63rd step of the heavenly stairway. The energy of the traces of the Grand Tao was becoming more and more terrifying, and the concept energy it developed had obviously become different as well. It possessed a copious and irresistible spirituality that was terrifying to the extreme. If it was any other sea spirit realm practitioner, his body would probably be obliterated in an instant. In fact, it was true. For thousands of years, There had been many geniuses in Green Deer School who came here to challenge the heavenly stairway, but those who could set foot here could be counted on one's fingers. The reason was that the power of the traces of the Grand Tao was like the momentum of heaven and earth, which was not something that a sea spirit realm practitioner could bear at all. At this moment, even Lin Sun felt the pressure, and he dared not take it lightly. The light cyan glow lingered around his body, like an ice dragon, swallowing clouds and spitting out mist, overturning rivers and seas. After a moment, the concept of water transformed into a heavy explosion, and a rain of light fell. It's the 63rd step. I've used the 5th fist force, and nearly half of my physical strength has been consumed. Lin Sun silently perceived and analyzed his own situation. If it was just a simple challenge, Lin Sun would have already ascended, and it would be impossible to consume a lot of time and physical strength. The key was that while he was challenging the heavenly stairway, he wanted to perceive and control the power of the Grand Tao, which naturally consumed more energy and time than usual. If the other cultivators in the academy were to find out about this, they would probably take Lin Sun to be a freak. After all, even ascending the heavenly stairway was extremely difficult for them. Yet Lin Sun instead took challenging the heavenly stairway as an opportunity to explore and try to grasp Grand Tao concepts. This seemed to be too abnormal, and it was embarrassing. Suddenly, when Lin Sun was perceiving with concentration, he suddenly captured a trace of vague, mysterious breath in his heart. It was as misty as a cloud, but full of the charm of water. He comprehended it. Lin Sun was excited and overjoyed, but when he wanted to comprehend it carefully, this trace of vague, mysterious trace disappeared again. It was like a swan claw in the snow mud, traceless. But Lin Sun was not depressed. On the contrary, his black eyes became extremely bright, and his heart was surging with excitement like a raging river. The perception just now, like a light breaking the darkness, let Lin Sun see a glimmer of hope on the way to the Grand Tao that he had been searching for so long. Perhaps in the past years, there were countless examples to prove that in the sea spirit realm, the Grand Tao was unpredictable and there was no way to find it. But what happened just now undoubtedly told Lin Sun that it was possible to comprehend and control the power of the Grand Tao in the sea spirit realm, and the barrier between the Tao Insight realm and the sea spirit realm was not unbreakable. The concept of water. Lin Sun took a deep breath and recovered his calmness. All the way up the stairs, he saw many different traces of the Grand Tao, but until now, only the trace of the concept of water could be perceived. Although it was only a trace and extremely uncertain, it pointed out a way for Lin Sun and made him clear the direction to seek for the Grand Tao. Without hesitation, Lin Sun continued to climb. This time, he no longer spent energy on other traces of the Grand Tao and began to seize the time to break through. Only when he encountered the steps with traces of water, he chose to stay, and he did not hesitate to restrain his strength and breath to prolong the time of the expedition, in order to further comprehend and control the concept of water. For a moment, Lin Sun's figure was like a rainbow, walking on the stone steps as if he was flying, and his speed was more than twice as fast as before. On the 91st stone step, Gu Yunting had just broken a terrible illusion and was taking the time to adjust his breath. After arriving here, he also felt strenuous, and his physical consumption accelerated, so he had to take a rest. Suddenly, Gu Yunting seemed to notice something, and his eyes suddenly looked down. He saw that Lin Sun had set foot on the 77th stone step, which made him frown. He still remembered that Lin Sun was far behind before, but in less than 10 minutes, Lin Sun had greatly shortened the distance between them, which seemed a little unusual. Did Lin Sun have been holding back his strength and intended to break out at this time to catch up with him all the way? Gu Yunting withdrew his gaze, and his handsome face was as calm as an ancient well. When he climbed the mountain before, he did have the idea of competing with Lin Sun, because yesterday he also noticed that Lin Sun caused a magnificent phenomenon of heaven and earth when he broke through the golden list of spiritual sea. This made him feel a trace of surprise in his heart. So when he saw Lin Sun today, he also wanted to take this opportunity to test Lin Sun's ability. But he was soon disappointed. Lin Sun's performance was very mediocre, not as strong as he imagined at all. Originally, Gu Yunting had already begun to ignore Lin Sun, but who would have thought that Lin Sun would start a breakout at this time? This also made Gu Yunting doubt whether Lin Sun wanted to use this kind of strategy to compete with him. In the face of absolute strength, strategy is after all a small way. Only exerting strength at this time is already doomed to be difficult to reverse the situation. Gu Yunting didn't think anymore and continued to walk on his stone steps. In his heart, Lin Sun might be called amazing, but he couldn't make him have the idea of competing at all. Hey, that little guy is starting to exert strength. In front of the cottage, the sloppy old man said in surprise. I said long ago, he is not worse than Gu Yunting. The dean spoke indifferently. He witnessed Lin Sun's performance on the Sea Spirit list with his own eyes yesterday, and even though he didn't leave his name in the end, Lin Sun's results at that time were even higher than Gu Yunting's. If that's the case, then this kid is extremely extraordinary, and he can be called a little monster in the ancient desolation realm. A wisp of light shot out from the sloppy old man's eyes, and it seemed as if the sun and moon were reflected within them, and they deduced the phenomenon of the great Tao that was incomparably terrifying. Senior brother, since you don't intend to interfere in this kid's matter, why don't you hand him over to me? The sloppy old man asked. No, the dean refused flatly. The sloppy old man smiled disapprovingly. Before long, the dean and the sloppy old man seemed to have sensed something, and they suddenly raised their heads and looked towards the peak of Tiandi Mountain in unison. On the 99th level, Gu Yunting's white clothes and black hair fluttered in the wind, and a myriad of dazzling crimson flames gushed out from his body like a divine ring of flames that enveloped his entire body and suffused with a miraculous aura. Rumble, no one knew when a dark cloud had emerged in the sky, and the sound of thunder resounded and surged between heaven and earth. In just an instant, bolts of lightning fell from the clouds, and it seemed like a twisting thunder snake that drowned Gu Yunting. He has broken through the realm. The golden body of Tao Fire is indeed a famous talent in ancient times. When he was advancing, he actually caused the heavenly thunder tribulation. It's rare to see one in tens of thousands of practitioners. The sloppy old man's eyes were clear, and they emitted a divine light. This is the foundation of a real talent. Crossing the heavenly thunder tribulation and refining the Tao body, this kind of supreme opportunity is something that other practitioners can't have. The dean couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Both of them knew that as long as Gu Yunting crossed the heavenly thunder tribulation, he could become a peerless practitioner of Tao Insight Realm. However, both of them didn't notice that at the same time that Gu Yunting was overcoming the tribulation and advancing, Lin Sun, who'd stepped foot on the 88th step, was silently enshrouded in circles of ripples that were like water, and they suffused through the pores of his body. Chapter 498. He finally succeeded. Lin Sun stood there, motionless, like a pine tree rooted on the cliff bank. In his sea of consciousness, a faintly discernible blue luster flickered. As it swept past the soul stars, the originally silver soul stars were instantly dyed with a beautiful layer of aqua light, azure, and translucent. But it didn't take long for them to return to their original color. It was as if the blue luster was igniting the star lamp, but when the blue luster left, the lamp would also be extinguished. One bright and one dim, just like breathing, was extremely wonderful. This was the power of the conception of water. Even if it was merely a strand, it was still extraordinary and possessed unfathomable profundities. It was the embodiment of the Tao. At this moment, Lin Sun could clearly perceive that there was a kind of Tao belonging to water in his soul, which made him perceive a kind of power belonging to Tao. The best was like water. The big one was majestic, like a waterfall flowing straight down, destroying mountains and cracking the earth. The small one was like dripping water piercing through stone, and the small one could see the general trend and moisten things imperceptibly. When it was soft, it was like the spring breeze and rain, and when it was hard, it was like the raging sea hitting the sky. As the saying goes, big and small have no fixed potential, and the combination of hardness and softness elaborates the mystery of heaven and earth. At this moment, Lin Sun finally realized the power of the conception, which was a profound understanding of the power of heaven and earth. If he could control it, he could exert incredible and terrifying power. Although it is only a wisp of Tao, it is a new understanding of Tao for me. In the future, as long as I practice and comprehend it, I can control the power of water and integrate it into my cultivation. Lin Sun took a deep breath and suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, the aura in his entire body seemed to have undergone a change, and it possessed an otherworldly and transcendent aura that was clear like water. If the dean of Green Deer School and the sloppy old man knew that Lin Sun, with the cultivation of Sea Spirit Realm, had comprehended and mastered a wisp of the power of the conception of water, they would not be able to keep calm. Unfortunately, the minds of the two of them had always been locked onto Gu Yunting at this moment, and were attracted by the phenomenon of the tribulation lightning he caused. Thus, they'd never noticed that the youth not far away from Gu Yunting had broken the publicly acknowledged convention of the world. He had done something that many outstanding talents in the past and present had never done, and if this was known by other practitioners in the outside world, it would be enough to cause a subversive uproar and shake the world of cultivation. At this time, Lin Sun also noticed that Gu Yunting was currently crossing a tribulation, drawing lightning from all directions to temper himself and break through. A halo that was condensed from divine flames illuminated Gu Yunting's surroundings, causing his entire body to be bathed in multicolored light. He raised his head to resist the lightning, simply like a god, his might unparalleled. This fellow is truly amazing. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel awestruck. He had been to the ancient spirit world and had seen many amazing talents, such as by Ling Shi, Song Yi, Qi Songfeng, Marquis Ling Tian, and so on. But almost none of them could compare with Gu Yunting. Perhaps only young sword King Shai Yutong and other heavenly talents of the older generation could compete with him. A Tao Insight Realm cultivator in his 20s, with a golden body of Tao fire. If this guy enters the ancient desolation realm in the future, he will definitely stand out. Lin Sun was lost in thought. He couldn't go forward at this time, because the heavenly thunder tribulation was surging and terrifying. Once he got close to it, he was bound to be affected. However, taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Sun saw the heavenly thunder tribulation for the first time, which was really rare. Generally speaking, if one didn't have a heaven-defying foundation, he couldn't trigger the heavenly thunder tribulation at all. At least as far as Lin Sun knew, 90% of the Tao Insight Realm cultivators in the world today had never experienced such a thing when they broke through. From this, it could be seen how stunning Gu Yunting was. Thunder tribulation. It is said that in ancient times, only the practitioners who walked out of the heavenly thunder tribulation could be called the real strong. I don't know whether it is true or not. Lin Sun calmly felt the destructive breath in the heavenly thunder tribulation, and his thoughts were flying. After a while, the thunder clouds dissipated, and the sky became clear again. Gu Yunting sat cross-legged on the 99th stone step, bathed in flames and lightning, meditating quietly. He had just passed the tribulation and needed to temper and stabilize his cultivation. His breath had obviously become different. There seemed to be a real dragon dormant in his body, which could frighten the world and disdain the world. Lin Sun stared silently for a moment, then withdrew his eyes and walked to the next step. Having comprehended a wisp of the essence of water, he was satisfied and began to devote all his energy and strength to breaking through. It's a pity that a young man like Gu Yunting is destined not to stay in Xiao Empire. Only in the ancient desolation realm can he shine. The slovenly old man sighed lightly. He was amazed by Gu Yunting's performance today. In a world like the ancient desolation, where geniuses came forth in large numbers and heroes were dazzling, perhaps it couldn't be said to be rare, but in the Xiao Empire, it could be said to be rare and second to none. I only hope that his future will not be hindered by the heavens' pivot holy land. The dean said indifferently. The sloppy old man was in a daze, and suddenly laughed. It seems that you are still not reconciled to what happened in those days. The dean didn't comment. Tell me, how are you going to deal with Lin's son? The sloppy old man's expression became serious. Although he has a lot of karma, he is a rare, good material. Are you going to let him run his own course? The dean was silent for a moment, and then said, a hidden dragon in the abyss must suffer many hardships before he can soar to the sky. For now, I don't intend to intervene. Tempering? The sloppy old man sneered. I'm afraid that he will have too many troubles and die prematurely. The dean's eyes moved slightly, but he didn't say anything more. Rush. On the stairway mountain, the higher it was, the more terrible the power imprinted on the stone steps was. Lin's son had to use all his strength to fight against it. The 91st, the 92nd, the 93rd. When he reached the 99th step, Lin's son was also soaked in cold sweat. His breath was heavy, and his face was slightly pale. His physical consumption was so great that he almost couldn't bear it. Fortunately, all that was left was a flight of stone steps. Whoosh! At this moment, Gu Yunting, who was meditating next to Lin's son, stood up. His whole body was overflowing with light, and his momentum soared up to the sky. At this moment, he was already a Tao Insight Realm cultivator. Every move he made used the power of heaven and earth, with a kind of majesty that could swallow mountains and rivers. But in just a moment, he restrained his momentum and became transcendent again, like an exiled immortal, plain and extraordinary. When he saw Lin's son, who was also standing on the 99th step, Gu Yunting couldn't help but be slightly stunned. He immediately withdrew his gaze, and his expression was calm like an ancient well. He was already different from Lin's son. He was above the sea spirit realm, and became a real Tao Insight Realm cultivator. Lin's son was destined to look up to him. A goshawk wouldn't care about an ant on the ground, because the two were in different realms. Just like Gu Yunting's state of mind at this moment, this was not a kind of arrogance, but a kind of transcendent and overlooking attitude. Lin's son originally wanted to greet him, but when he saw Gu Yunting's attitude of above all living beings, he suddenly smiled, ignored him, and stepped up. Almost at the same time, Gu Yunting also stepped on the last stone step. Swish! The two arrived at the same time, but they didn't look at each other, as if the other didn't exist. This is the peak of Tianyi Mountain? Lin Sun's gaze swept around, and he saw clouds and rosy clouds, old rocks with vines hanging on them, orchids emitting fragrance, and a scorching sun hanging high in the sky, sprinkling down magnificent golden light. The mountains and rivers were beautiful, and the scenery was picturesque, giving people a feeling of having a view of all the small mountains. However, apart from that, there was nothing special about it. Gu Yunting was even more direct. He swept his gaze around, then turned around and left. His white clothes fluttered, and he suddenly disappeared into the sky. From beginning to end, he didn't look at Lin Sun again. I only hope that if we meet in the ancient desolation realm in the future, you can still be like this. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. He didn't have any ill feelings towards Gu Yunting, but he suddenly remembered what the headmaster had said. He knew that as long as Gu Yunting entered the ancient desolation realm, he would definitely go to the heavens' pivot holy land to cultivate, and the heavens' pivot holy land was a place that would bring disaster to him. Lin Sun couldn't help but worry that if he met Gu Yunting in the future, they might become enemies, and it wouldn't be like today. Even if they ignored each other, they could live in harmony. In front of the hut, when Lin Sun arrived, the headmaster had already left. He didn't know that when he was climbing the Tianyi Mountain, the headmaster and the sloppy old man had stared at him and talked about his life experience. For more than 300 years, no one has been able to reach the peak of Tianyi Mountain. But today, you and Gu Yunting have done it together. It's really surprising. The sloppy old man said with a smile. Senior, You flatter me. Lin Sun smiled and cupped his hands. Little guy, you still don't have a master, do you? Do you want to consider becoming my disciple? The sloppy old man's eyes revealed a touch of enthusiasm, as if he was staring at a flawless jade. Lin Sun was surprised. Forget it, I'll think about it. After all, it's just a whim of mine, and I can't determine whether you are suitable to inherit my mantle. The sloppy old man said casually. Lin Sun almost couldn't help but roll his eyes. This old guy was too perfunctory. Just based on his attitude, he couldn't be his disciple. Not long after, Lin Sun took back his identity nameplate and turned to leave. Alas, what a pity. Why is this boy's life experience so special? In front of the hut, the sloppy old man sighed. In the spiritual affairs hall, as usual, it was bustling with activity. Many students of the school gathered here. Some came to exchange their points for the things they needed, and some came to get experience tasks. It was quite lively. Hey, isn't that Lin Sun? What? He's Lin Sun? He really looks too young. When Lin Sun arrived, he was immediately recognized, causing a lot of uproar. Since the news of what happened in Marshall Courtyard yesterday spread, Lin Sun could be regarded as a celebrity in Green Deer School. Everyone knew of his brutal deeds of defeating Lan Yu, Jin Zhulu, and others, and then ascending to the first place of Sea Spirit Gold list. Therefore, when Lin Sun appeared in the Spiritual Affairs Hall, he naturally attracted a lot of attention. Chapter 499. What was Lin Sun doing here? Many people in the Spiritual Affairs Hall were curious. Lin Sun went straight to the area for exchanging spiritual materials, took out his identity nameplate, and handed it to an old man guarding the place. He said, "Sorry to trouble you to exchange for the horn of one-legged ox." The old man's pupils suddenly dilated. He stood up and asked incredulously, "Have you passed the celestial ladder?" "What celestial ladder?" Some students were confused. The mountain of Celestial Ladder is a mountain with traces of the Great Way. It's said that those who can climb up to it are the most powerful talents in the world. Because the Celestial Ladder is too difficult, no one has been able to set foot on it in the past hundreds of years. Soon, someone explained, which immediately aroused the exclamations of the crowd. No way. Lin Sun is too fierce, isn't he? It can't be false. Didn't you hear that he wants to exchange for the horn of one-legged ox? As far as I know, only those who pass the Celestial Ladder are qualified to exchange for this treasure. He just ranked first on the Spiritual Sea Gold list yesterday, and today he passed the Celestial Ladder that no one has passed for hundreds of years. Do you think the students of our martial arts yard are going to die? There was a lot of noise in the hall. Everyone looked at Lin Sun with surprise and doubt, as if they were looking at a monster. Indeed, it seemed absurd. Lin Sun, a young master of spiritual tattoos in the yard of spiritual tattoos, had such a great achievement in martial cultivation. He was just like a monster, which made people not know what standard to use to measure him. It was so rare. The most terrible thing was that he was only 16 years old this year, but he could have such outstanding achievements in both spiritual tattoos and martial arts. It was just like going against the natural order. He really passed the test. The old man checked Lin Sun's identity nameplate. When he confirmed that Lin Sun was telling the truth, he was stunned and shocked. Finally, he handed a sealed black jade box to Lin Sun, which contained a horn of one-legged ox. It's finally done. Lin Sun was completely relaxed. With the horn of one-legged ox, he had the core spiritual materials to refine the armor with spiritual tattoos. He only needed to wait for Shunta to prepare other spiritual materials, and then he could go to the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower to start his refining. Wait a minute. As soon as Lin Sun walked out of the Spiritual Affairs Hall, he was stopped. His clothes were whiter than snow, and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. His soft black hair was suffused with a luster, and his bearing was extraordinary like that of an exiled immortal. It was actually Gu Yunting. When they saw Gu Yunting, the entire area boiled over. Many students stopped and looked at Gu Yunting with fanatical gazes. Perhaps Lin Sun was extremely dazzling, but he wasn't a member of the Martial Dao courtyard in the end. On the other hand, Gu Yunting was different. 5 years ago, his name had shaken the entire academy, and he'd become a blazing sun that was the focus of everyone's attention. But now, after 5 years of seclusion, he had appeared out of nowhere and was ranked on the legendary spiritual sea master list. Such an outstanding person naturally became the target of fanatical worship. "What's up?" Lin Sun was surprised. He didn't expect that Gu Yunting, who had always been above all living beings, would take the initiative to appear in front of him. However, Lin Sun was not excited at all. He even guessed that the reason why this guy took the initiative to find him must be for something. "I need the Kuei ox's horn. Can you give it to me?" "Don't worry, I can give you the same value of compensation." Gu Yunting opened his mouth with an indifferent voice. Standing there, he seemed to stand out from the crowd. His white clothes were whiter than snow, and his elegant demeanor was dazzling. Lin Sun secretly thought that he had guessed right. He shook his head without thinking. "Sorry, I also need the Kuei ox's horn." Gu Yunting frowned slightly. "You should know that I had the chance to exchange for the Kuei ox's horn before you." Lin Sun nodded. "Yes, you and I ascended the mountain of celestial ladder at the same time, but unfortunately, you were a step slower." Hearing this, all the students nearby were shocked. They realized that in recent days, not only Lin Sun had ascended the mountain of celestial ladder, but even Gu Yunting had achieved this step. Something that hadn't happened for hundreds of years actually happened today. All of a sudden, those students looked at Gu Yunting in a different way. They became more and more fanatical and admiring. He deserved to be the existence that could be on the spiritual sea master list. He didn't give Lin Sun the chance to show off at all. Gu Yunting waved his sleeve, and a bright and colorful ball of light suddenly appeared in the void. All the people present were shocked, and their eyes widened. Those were more than a dozen kinds of spiritual materials and herbs that were hard to find in the world. The value of each kind was not inferior to that of the Kuei ox's horn. For example, a blood Ganoderma that had matured in 3,000 years was bright red and glistening, gushing out brilliant clouds, dyeing the void red, and diffusing a unique fragrance, making people feel as if their souls are going to be intoxicated by it after a sniff. For example, the octagonal purple copper iron, a thumb-sized piece, was worth tens of thousands of gold and was regarded as a rare treasure in the world. But this piece in front of them was as big as a fist, so it could be imagined how shocking its value was. In addition, there were rare treasures such as Shang Qingjin spiritual essence, Lan Yu Fuling, Alcade 9-star flower, and so on, dazzling and too much for the eyes to take in. From time to time, there was the sound of people gasping. Some were covetous and envious, and some were shocked and absent-minded. They didn't expect that Gu Yunting's net worth was so strong. The value of this batch of spiritual materials couldn't even be measured by money. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. As a spiritual tattooist, he naturally knew how shocking the value of these spiritual materials was. "You can choose two at will. Take it as compensation for giving up the horn of one-legged ox. I believe you have seen my sincerity," Gu Yunting said casually, still with a calm look, as if he was very sure that Lin Sun couldn't refuse this temptation. Because this kind of compensation had already far exceeded the value of the horn of one-legged ox. Many people couldn't help but envy Lin Sun. This guy was really lucky. If it were them, they definitely wouldn't dare to expect to get such a generous treatment. But unexpectedly, Lin Sun's black eyes were clear and calm. Without thinking, he refused again. "The horn of one-legged ox is priceless to me. No matter what you give me, I can't give it up." Everyone was stunned. He actually refused. Even Gu Yunting was slightly stunned and couldn't help but frown. Not satisfied? "Well, I can let you choose 3 spiritual materials." Lin Sun also frowned at once. This guy's tone was really big. Didn't he hear that Lin Sun didn't intend to give up this thing at all? "Lin Sun, be content. Senior brother Gu Yunting has shown such sincerity. If you get an inch and want a foot, it will be a little too much. Lin Sun, you should feel honored to be treated with such courtesy by senior brother Gu Yunting." Some students nearby spoke up one after another, speaking up for Gu Yunting. Lin Sun immediately smiled. His gaze swept around, and in the end, he was too lazy to speak anymore. He turned around and left. He didn't have the mood to waste time with these guys. His attitude of disregard immediately annoyed many people. But because of Lin Sun's outstanding prestige yesterday, no one dared to stop Lin Sun. Gu Yunting couldn't help but show a touch of coldness between his brows. Because he needed to smell the weapon, he was determined to get the horn of one-legged ox. He originally thought that he had shown enough sincerity, but he never thought that Lin Sun still didn't appreciate it. This made him a little unhappy. "You are Lin Sun? I hope you can give up the horn of one-legged ox." Suddenly, a sweet voice sounded. A young girl came from afar. She had a delicate and beautiful appearance, snow-white skin and jade-like bones. Her whole body was flowing with a layer of crystal radiance. Her delicate body was slender, slim, and graceful, and her small waist could be grasped in one arm. The curves of her figure were perfect, without a single flaw to be found. This was a kind of dazzling beauty like that of a phoenix. Seeing her, the whole audience was immediately stirred. Princess Spirit Phoenix is here. 5 years ago, she had a close relationship with Gu Yunting. Who would have thought that just as Gu Yunting came out of seclusion, she would hear the news and come, reappearing in the academy. Princess Spirit Phoenix was the most favored daughter of the current Great Emperor. She had a peerless appearance, stunning talent, and incomparably amazing cultivation talent. Her identity could also be said to be incomparably famous, and she was the pearl of the current imperial family. 5 years ago, she had cultivated in the martial arts courtyard. Until Gu Yunting went into seclusion, she suddenly returned to the imperial family and never appeared in the academy again. And now, Gu Yunting had just come out of seclusion, and Princess Spirit Phoenix had also appeared in the academy. This caused many people to be unable to help but let their imaginations run wild. At this moment, she blocked Lin Sun's path. Her beautiful face was like a phoenix that had descended to the world. In fact, she was indeed like a proud phoenix. When she spoke, her sparkling and flawless chin was slightly raised, revealing her snow-white, swan-like neck. She was incomparably arrogant. "That's right, I'm Lin Sun. But I've already said that I don't intend to give up the one-legged ox's horn. I also hope that you won't block my way," Lin Sun said with a smile, but in fact, he was already somewhat impatient in his heart. Why was Gu Yunting the same as this Princess Spirit Phoenix? They both looked as if they had him in the bag. They really took him too seriously. Many people were shocked and secretly smacked their lips. They felt that Lin Sun was too daring. First, he refused Gu Yunting, and now, even when Princess Spirit Phoenix appeared, he didn't give her any face at all. Wasn't he worried that he would offend too many people and cause endless troubles in the future? "I've long heard that you, Lin Sun, are extremely daring and run amok. Today, I've finally seen it for myself. But since I'm here today, you must give up the one-legged ox's horn." Princess Spirit Phoenix frowned, and her whole body was filled with a pressing noble and proud aura. Although her voice was pleasant to the ear, her words had a domineering and commanding tone. Obviously, this was not the first time she had done this. Lin Sun completely lost his patience. He waved his hand and said, "I don't care who you are. Today, it's useless even if God comes. Get out of my way." Everyone nearby couldn't help but gasp. Lin Sun was simply arrogant to the point of lawlessness. This was Princess Spirit Phoenix, the descendant of the current emperor. Who dared to talk to her like this? "How dare you? How dare you offend Her Highness? Believe it or not, you will be punished today." Next to him, a young man scolded. His voice was cold and stern, and his whole body was full of a threatening momentum. "Who the hell are you? Stay aside." Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. He didn't want to cause any trouble before refining the armor of spiritual tattoos. But he never thought that after enduring blindly, the other really took him as a soft persimmon. Everyone nearby felt a little confused. The identity of the young man was also not simple. He was the direct descendant of the Qi family, a superior aristocratic family. His name was Qiyu. As early as last year, he had broken through the Tao Insight realm and went to the Zhen Wu courtyard to cultivate. He was absolutely a talent with extremely frightening identity, status, and strength. But now, Lin Sun unceremoniously scolded Qiyu. He was too daring. Chapter 500. Chiyu's body was tall and slender. He was handsome and extraordinary. His eyes shone with a golden light, incomparably terrifying. Golden pupil reflection. This was a vision unique to the direct bloodline of the Qi family. They were gifted and compatible with the Great Way. When they reached the Tao Insight realm, they could perfectly control the power of the concept of gold. It was extremely terrifying. As an influential figure of the younger generation, ever since Qiyu stepped into the Tao Insight realm last year and was admitted to the Zhen Wu courtyard to cultivate, he had attracted the attention of many influential figures. In the current Green Deer School, almost no one dared to oppose him. Even some instructors were courteous to Qiyu. But at this time, Lin Sun rebuked Qiyu in a rude manner. Everyone was naturally shocked and thought that Lin Sun's courage was so great that it almost broke through the sky. Chiyu's face became cold. Golden light surged his eyes. He glanced at Lin Sun like dazzling lightning. "You dare to be rude to me?" Chiyu's voice was like a sword. His killing intent spread. Everyone's face changed. They knew that Lin Sun's words had angered Chiyu. The consequences were unimaginable. Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of it. He put his hands behind his back and squinted at Chiyu. "I'm teaching you a lesson. Don't you understand? As a student, you dare to offend your superiors, offend the instructor, and threaten him. You're really bold." Everyone was stunned. No one had thought that Lin Sun would use his identity as an instructor to suppress Chiyu. It was fair and square. No one could refute him. Everyone knew that Lin Sun was indeed an instructor. Even if he was only 16 years old, even if he was only an instructor of the spiritual tattoo courtyard, in Green Deer School, his identity was not something that any student could slander. Even Chi Yu's expression froze. He did not expect Lin Sun to play such a trick. "You were the one who disrespected Princess Spirit Phoenix first, and then slandered me. I merely wanted to tell you what was right and wrong. Yet you used your status as an instructor to abuse your authority. Someone as shameless as you. Do you think you're fit to lecture me?" Chi Yu sucked in a deep breath, his expression turning cold and severe. "Oh, I didn't expect that the students these days are so arrogant. They don't even respect the instructors. When I have the chance, I will go and ask the dean if any random cat or dog that jumps out of nowhere dares to trample on the rules and disrespect the instructors." Lin Sun said slowly with a fearless look. Everyone cursed in their hearts. Not only was this fellow arrogant, he was also shameless. As soon as he saw that the situation wasn't right, he used his identity as an instructor as a shield. Chi was infuriated. Ever since he started cultivating, who dared to use the word Tom, Dick, or Harry to describe him? He was simply tired of living. "People like you don't deserve to be an instructor. I'll personally step in and have the academy strip you of your identity as an instructor. Let's see how arrogant you can be then." On the other side, Princess Spirit Phoenix also couldn't take it anymore. She felt that Lin Sun's face was too hateful, refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Everyone's hearts trembled. Princess Spirit Phoenix's identity was not ordinary. If she really did this, it was possible that the academy would react and strip Lin Sun of his teaching qualifications. However, Lin Sun didn't care at all. He sneered and said, "All right, go quickly. I'll wait for your good news." With an indifferent look, he turned around and walked away. "Stop right there." Princess Spirit Phoenix was so angry that she clenched her teeth. She was the descendant of the current emperor. Her status was respected and her appearance was peerless. Wherever she went, she was respected and no one dared to go against her. Who would have thought that Lin Sun, a mere instructor, dared to look down on her? "Do you still remember Marquis Ling Tian?" After saying this, Lin Sun strode away without looking back. Marquis Ling Tian. Who wouldn't remember? Lin Sun's words had an obvious meaning. It was a warning. However, he didn't expect that it would be better if he didn't mention Marquis Ling Tian. Once he did, Princess Spirit Phoenix was furious. This was a disgrace to the royal family of the empire. Lin Sun didn't repent and atone for his crimes, and even dared to threaten her with this matter. He was simply too arrogant. The other students present were also frightened. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would dare to mention Marquis Ling Tian in front of Princess Spirit Phoenix. What was the difference between this and courting death? Lin's son, if you don't kneel and atone for your crimes today, don't even think about leaving. Suddenly, Chi shouted loudly. Golden light rose from his body and transformed into a giant hand that grabbed at Lin's son in the distance. The giant hand rumbled and pressed down on the void. It was surrounded by blazing light, and the power of the Great Way was imprinted in it. It was sharp, overbearing, and wanted to crush everything. It was incomparably terrifying. Everyone nearby felt their skin prickling and their hearts trembling. This was the power of the Tao Insight Realm, the embodiment of the concept of gold. No one expected that Chi would be so strong. It was obvious that he wanted to suppress Lin's son with one strike and force him to make a fool of himself. Princess Spirit Phoenix looked proud as she looked on coldly. Lin's son's actions just now embarrassed her. Naturally, she hoped that Chi could suppress Lin's son with one strike. Gu Yunting didn't say anything from beginning to end. He seemed very aloof, as if he didn't care about what was happening in front of him. Boom! The giant golden hand fell, and the void collapsed. It was boundlessly overbearing, and brilliant golden light surged. Just as Lin Sun's figure was about to be covered, Lin Sun suddenly turned around, and a trace of coldness flashed through his black eyes. A fist energy was like a python coming out of the abyss. It was suffused with a faint cyan glow, and like a cyan full moon rising, it ruthlessly smashed out. In an instant, a violent collision occurred here. It was earth-shaking, and multicolored light swept out, drowning everything. Many people's expressions changed, and they retreated one after another. To them, Chi Yu's attack was too terrifying. It displayed the power of the Tao Insight Realm, and it possessed unimaginable destructive power. It could almost sweep away any sea of spirit realm existence. But to everyone's surprise, when the smoke and dust dissipated, Lin Sun wasn't suppressed. He stood there with his black hair fluttering in the wind. His whole body was enshrouded in faint cyan divine light, and he had a kind of spiritual and ethereal momentum. He actually blocked it. How is this possible? Those students were flabbergasted, and they couldn't believe their eyes. They all knew that Lin Sun was almost invincible in the sea of spirit realm, and extremely abnormal. But there was still a big gap between him and the Tao Insight Realm. It was like a natural chasm that couldn't be crossed. But now, Lin Sun faced this attack head-on without dodging, and he wasn't injured at all. How could this not be shocking? Gu Yunting, who had always been aloof from the world, couldn't help but narrow his eyes and frown. Although Chi Yu had just advanced to the Tao Insight Realm last year, his bloodline was ancient, and he was innately close to the Great Way of Metal. His combat strength was more outstanding than ordinary Tao Insight Realm existences. But Lin Sun was able to take Chi Yu's attack head-on. This was indeed very unusual. There was a moment of absolute silence. Even Chi Yu couldn't help but be stunned. Others didn't know, but he knew very well that he had used 50% of his strength in this attack. He wanted to suppress Lin Sun with one move, make him kneel on the ground, and make a fool of himself in front of everyone. But Lin Sun actually blocked it in the end. Are you sure you want me to kneel and atone for my crimes? Lin Sun's handsome face was indifferent. His black eyes were like lightning, as deep as the abyss. He was already enraged. His third brother had been provoked again, and even attacked him. This had already touched Lin Sun's bottom line. Even a clay figurine had some temper, let alone Lin Sun. He was someone who was never willing to suffer losses. Chi Yu, why show mercy when dealing with such a shameless thief? Princess Spirit Phoenix spoke, somewhat displeased. She thought that Chi Yu was holding back his strength, so she simply ignored Lin Sun's words. Your Highness, rest assured, I will capture him right now. Chi Yu's expression turned cold. He stepped out. His figure was tall and slender, and his bearing was dignified. At this moment, he was circulating his strength, and his whole body was surrounded by a golden glow. His blood and chi were boiling, and his aura soared into the sky, causing the void to wail. Dong! He formed a seal with his hands, and a golden cloud appeared. It was as majestic as a mountain, and it pressed down. At that moment, the world seemed to collapse, unable to withstand this terrifying power. The airflow rumbled, and golden light shot out. Lin Sun smiled, revealing a mouthful of snow-white teeth. That smile was warm and bright, but his black eyes were cold. Those who understood Lin Sun knew that he was truly angry. "Since you are looking for a beating, I will fulfill your wish." With a calm and indifferent voice, Lin Sun used the ice drake steps and rushed forward. Almost at the same time, the spiritual sea in his body was operating at full force, like a storm awakening from silence. With a punch, the mountains and rivers collapsed, the void exploded, and the cries of dragons and phoenixes appeared. It was filled with a mighty power that could shake the world. This was the 9 strikes of shaking heaven, superimposed by Lin Sun's 7 stacks. Rumble and earth-shattering collision sounded. Everyone nearby was shaken to the point that their blood and chi churned. Their bodies trembled, and they had no choice but to retreat in shock. It was too terrifying. If this happened in the outside world, the land within a radius of thousands of feet would most likely be sunk. Fortunately, it was in Green Deer Academy, and the surrounding void was covered with a mysterious and ancient defensive power. It silently dissolved much of the destruction and destruction. Chi was shocked. This blow was once again blocked by Lin Sun. The others were also shocked, as if they had seen a ghost. Blocking the first blow might have been luck, but blocking the second blow, how could it be luck? But Lin Sun did not waste any words. His figure was like an ice dragon, suddenly disappearing in the void. The next moment, he had already rushed to Chi, his fist punching down. Too fast. Lin Sun displayed the mysteries of the ice drake steps to the fullest. Chi could not help but feel his heart tighten, and he hurriedly raised his hand to block. "Kneel down first." At this time, Lin Sun's black hair was flying, and his handsome face was full of disdain. His body was like a precious cauldron, shining brilliantly. He had used all his strength. A simple and unadorned fist force rushed out, without a trace of smoke or fire. It was like a natural creation, light and gentle. Boom! Chi only felt pain in his arms. A copious and irresistible force pressed down on him, like a divine mountain moving horizontally. It pressed down on his body fiercely, making his head buzz and his muscles and bones almost explode. Then, with a thud, he fell from the void. "You're courting death." He roared angrily, the blood and chi all over his body burning. But it was already a step too late. Lin Sun had already taken the opportunity to arrive. One palm pressed on the top of Chi Yu's head, and the other hand fiercely slapped on his shoulder. Chapter 501. Everything happened too fast. From Lin Sun's counterattack to Chi Yu being suppressed and kneeling on the ground, it almost ended in the blink of an eye. Some practitioners didn't even have time to react. They only saw a blur in front of their eyes. Chi Yu, who had monstrous divine power and imposing manner, knelt on the ground. They widened their eyes and looked dull. They couldn't believe their own eyes. The direct descendant of the dignified Qi clan, a Tao Insight realm expert of the Zhen Wu side courtyard, had knelt down just like that before he could release his divine mightiness. This scene was too shocking. It might be understandable if Qi Yu was suppressed by other Tao Insight realm cultivators, but he was defeated by a Sea Spirit realm young man. Moreover, he was suppressed in an instant without experiencing a fierce battle. This was simply too unbelievable. Looking at the whole world, from ancient to modern times, there were almost no similar examples. After all, this was crossing a great realm and defeating a stronger cultivator. With the foundation of Sea Spirit realm, he overpowered a Tao Insight realm cultivator. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they probably wouldn't dare to believe it. Princess Spirit Phoenix was also stunned. Her starry eyes widened and her red lips slightly opened. She looked as if she was struck by lightning. She also didn't expect that Chi would lose in such a way. It was simply too humiliating. A Tao Insight realm cultivator was suppressed and knelt on the ground by a Sea Spirit realm cultivator. If it was spread out, his wisdom would be destroyed, and he would become a laughingstock. Gu Yunting's white clothes fluttered in the wind. His figure was unique, and there was an inexplicable qi circulating around him. He had just crossed the tribulation and advanced to the Tao Insight realm. Originally, he regarded himself as an eagle and Lin Sun as an ant. They were destined to be people of two different worlds. Therefore, he didn't take Lin Sun seriously. But now, he finally realized that the young man who had ascended to the top of the stairway mountain with him actually possessed a heaven-defying combat strength. He could not help but feel surprised and shocked, and he could not maintain his previous indifference and aloofness. If they knew that Lin Sun had killed more than one Tao Insight Realm cultivator in the ancient spirit world, they wouldn't have reacted like this. At that time, Lin Sun's spiritual veins hadn't been completely transformed. Now, his cultivation, soul, and physique had all reached an unprecedented level. At this moment, in order to deal with Qi Yu, Lin Sun used all his strength unexpectedly. Qi Yu was unable to resist. After all, Qi Yu could never imagine that Lin Sun, a practitioner of Sea Spirit Realm, could be so cruel. Ah! Qi Yu roared angrily, his eyes about to pop out of their sockets. His face was ashen and twisted as he struggled to get up. Since he started cultivating until now, even though he couldn't be said to be one of the top figures amongst his peers, he could still be considered to be a genius that was the center of attention. When had he ever suffered such extraordinary humiliation? Being forced to kneel by a spiritual ocean-tier youngster. This was even more unbearable than being killed. It made him so mad that he almost went insane. Kneel down and repent. With a snap, Lin Sun pressed Qi Yu's head with his right hand and slapped Qi Yu's shoulder with his left hand, making Qi Yu twitch all over and unable to exert his strength. Seeing Lin Sun being so rude, people nearby couldn't help but gasp. This guy was really cruel. As for Qi Yu, he was so ashamed and angry that he wanted to die. He was so sullen that he was about to go crazy. He was a dignified disciple of the true martial courtyard, a proud son of the Grotto Heaven realm. Even ordinary instructors had to be courteous to him. But now he was forced to kneel down by Lin Sun. Such humiliation made his eyes bloodshot with hatred. His expression was ferocious, and he no longer had that unique, arrogant demeanor from before. Lin Sun, if you have the guts, kill me. Otherwise, I will pull out your tendons, peel your skin, and grind your bones into ashes. You will never have a good death. Qi Yu's voice seemed to be squeezed out from his chest, filled with endless hatred and killing intent. Everyone felt a chill. They were sure that since Qi Yu dared to say so, he would definitely dare to do so. He had undoubtedly treated Lin Sun as a mortal enemy. Slap! Lin Sun slapped Qi Yu's cheek. The sound was crisp and clear, leaving a red and swollen palm print, making everyone nearby feel the pain and panic. As a student, you trampled on the rules of the school and offended your superiors. Now that I asked you to kneel down and repent, you didn't repent and even dared to act violently. Do you really think I don't dare to kill you? At this moment, Lin Sun's expression was serious and awe-inspiring. His black eyes were cold and deep, bursting with killing intent. Being forced to kneel on the ground and then receiving a crisp slap, Qi Yu was stunned. He didn't dare to imagine that there was someone in this world who dared to treat him like this. Was he really not afraid of death? Not only Qi Yu, but everyone nearby was also dumbfounded. At this moment, they finally understood why Lin Sun dared to force Marquis Ling Tianhao to kneel. This guy was originally a person who ran amok and acted recklessly. Qi was about to fly into a rage and leave behind some harsh words. But when he met Lin Sun's gaze, he felt as if a knife was scraping his bones. His heart was filled with a chill. He suddenly had a strong intuition that if he continued to struggle and resist, this guy in front of him would definitely not hesitate to kill him. This caused his expression to change. For the first time, he clearly felt a fatal threat. Lin Sun, you are too impudent. I'll give you a chance. Release Qi Yu now. Otherwise, no matter how heaven-defying your talent is, you are destined to suffer today. Princess Spirit Phoenix's expression was cold and indifferent, emitting an oppressive majesty. Everyone's heart trembled. Princess Spirit Phoenix was peerless. Even her voice was clear and pleasant to listen to. But at this moment, her words were full of killing intent, full of threats, making people's hearts turn cold. No one dared to doubt her words, because this was the youngest daughter of the current emperor. Her status was like the moon in the sky, indescribably noble. One word from her could decide a person's life or death. But Lin Sun was unperturbed, his tone calm. I haven't even settled the score with you, but you have already threatened me. Do you really think that just because you're a descendant of the imperial family, you can be lawless? Remember, this is Green Deer School. Your identity is a student. If you dare to behave atrociously, I will teach you how to behave. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. What did it mean to run amok and have no scruples? That was it. Reprimanding a pearl in the palm of the current emperor, perhaps only Lin Sun alone dared to do so. Are you provoking me? Princess Spirit Phoenix's face was as cold as ice. It was obvious that she was completely enraged. With her current status, even the head of an aristocratic family would not dare to reprimand her. But Lin Sun had repeatedly looked down on her. This was simply the greatest blasphemy against her dignity. It's not a provocation. I just want to tell you that when I suppressed Marquis Ling Tian, the current emperor and empress did not stop me. If you really want to follow in the footsteps of Marquis Ling Tian, I can satisfy you today. Lin Sun's voice was calm. He stood there with his black hair draped over his shoulders. His figure was tall and slender, one hand pressed on the top of Qi Yu's head. Combined with the words he said, there was a kind of power that looked down on the world. Everyone was surprised. They had to admit that no matter how arrogant and presumptuous Lin Sun was, the courage and bearing he displayed was indeed something that few could match. You, Princess Spirit Phoenix clenched her teeth, her eyes spitting fire. This was the first time she had seen such a madman like Lin Sun. He was simply a bastard and deserved to die 1,000 times. Young people, each take a step back and stop fighting. At this moment, from a spiritual affairs hall not far away, an old man walked out and spoke in a low voice. This was an old man respectfully known as Old Song Yinwen. He had an extraordinary status and had always been in charge of the spiritual affairs hall. His origin was unfathomable, and his power was as vast as the sea, immeasurable. No, Princess Spirit Phoenix said resolutely. I also don't agree. Lin Sun had already decided to shed all pretense of cordiality. How could he back down now? I was just unwilling to give up the horn of the Kuei ox and was repeatedly provoked and humiliated by these students. They even dared to attack me. You have to know that I am a teacher, and they still dared to do this. They are simply lawless and have no regard for the rules of Green Deer Academy. His words were harsh, powerful, and resonant, shaking the heavens and the earth, shocking everyone present. They realized that Lin Sun's actions obviously meant that he knew he could not be merciful and intended to make the matter even more serious. Indeed, this was Lin Sun's plan. He had no choice but to make trouble, since he had already offended them. He did not mind making the matter even more serious. It would be best if he could make the entire Green Deer Academy know about it. What happened? In the distance, more and more people were alarmed and hurried over. Seeing this, Song Yinwen, who walked out of the Spiritual Affairs Hall, could not help but sigh. He had been in the Spiritual Affairs Hall the whole time and saw everything with his own eyes. Naturally, he knew the ins and outs of the matter. Lin Sun, I believe that the Academy will give you a satisfactory explanation for today's matter. I hope you will stop now and stop making trouble. Song Yinwen said. This time, his voice became even more dignified and had a kind of deterrent power that could directly touch the hearts of people. The audience was in an uproar. They were all surprised. It was obvious that Song Yinwen was standing on the side of the public and did not help Princess Spirit Emperor and the others. Hearing this, Princess Spirit Phoenix's face darkened, and she was extremely angry. She was about to speak, but was stopped by Gu Yunting, who transmitted his voice to her. Let's leave it like this for the time being. There are many important people who have already paid attention to this matter. It's not good to continue making trouble. Princess Spirit Phoenix's face was gloomy, and her starry eyes were filled with anger. She stared at Lin Sun for a long time and finally snorted coldly, not saying anything more. As for Chi Yu, his face was ugly. There were more and more people who came to watch the show, and he was still forced to kneel on the ground. This made him so ashamed and angry that he wanted to slit his own throat and commit suicide. Lin Sun, let's leave it like this. Since Tsang Yinweng has spoken, I believe he will give you a satisfactory answer. Suddenly, the voice of Shun Ta, as senior spirit tattoo master of the spirit tattoo courtyard, rang in Lin Sun's ears. Obviously, Shun Tua was also alarmed and rushed here. Lin Sun was silent for a moment, then immediately cupped his hands towards Tsang Yinweng and said, "Since Senior has spoken, how can Junior refuse? But Junior hopes that today's matter will not happen again. Otherwise, the rules of our Green Deer Academy will become a decoration." After saying this, he turned around and left. From beginning to end, he did not even look at Chi Yu, Princess Spirit Emperor, Gu Yunting, and the others. "Just you wait. I don't believe you will hide in the academy forever." Princess Spirit Phoenix was so angry that her whole body was trembling and her teeth were itching. "Lin Sun, if I don't kill you, I swear I am not a human." Chi Yu also roared in his heart, his eyes full of hatred and killing intent. Gu Yunting watched Lin Sun leave. His expression was as aloof as before, but there was a faint cold light overflowing in his eyes. Today's incident could be said to be a humiliation to the three of them, and everyone knew that they would definitely not swallow this humiliation. Chapter 502. Lin Sun, how did you provoke Princess Spirit Phoenix and Chi Yu? The background of these two people is bigger than the other. There are very few people in Green Deer Academy who dare to provoke them. I didn't provoke them. They provoked me first. Alas, you are still young and impetuous. Now that you have offended them, the consequences are worrying. On the way back to Spiritual Tattoo Courtyard, Shun Tua sighed and looked worried. He was also shocked by Lin Sun's actions just now. Not only did Lin Sun dare to reprimand Princess Spirit Phoenix, he even forced Chi Yu to kneel on the ground. Lin Sun looked indifferent and relaxed. He said leisurely, "Senior, I am the victim. I have been very generous not to pursue their fault." Shin Tua smiled bitterly. "That's true, but aren't you worried about their revenge?" Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. "Do they dare to commit murder in Green Deer School?" "Of course not. What a joke. This is Green Deer School. Not to mention them. Even the big shots of the Imperial Royal Family dare not act recklessly." "That's enough," Lin Sun said with a smile. "Senior, don't worry. I have offended many people since I entered the Forbidden City. It doesn't matter if I offend a few more." Seeing Lin Sun's desperate look, Shun Tua smiled bitterly again. He couldn't understand Lin Sun. He was too bold and didn't seem to know what fear was. When they returned to Spiritual Tattoo Courtyard, the two began to talk business. Shun Tua told Lin Sun that he had used all his strength to exchange for the spiritual materials Lin Sun needed. In less than 3 days, all the spiritual materials would be collected. After knowing this, Lin Sun immediately decided to go to the 9th floor of the spiritual tower and start to prepare for the spiritual tattoo armor in advance. On the same day, the news that Lin Sun suppressed Chi Yu and reprimanded Princess Spirit Phoenix spread throughout Green Deer School, causing a great uproar. No one expected that Lin Sun would be so unwilling to be left out. On the first day after returning to school, he made a scene in the martial arts arena of Martial Garden and defeated Lan Yu, Jin Zhulu, Shui Yun, and other geniuses. On the same day, he reached the first place in Spiritual Sea Gold List, overshadowing all the disciples in Martial Garden. On the second day, he had even reprimanded Princess Spirit Phoenix under the watchful eyes of the crowd and forced Chi Yu to kneel on the ground. He was simply too troublesome. Is Lin really not afraid of death? This was what everyone was wondering. They couldn't understand why he dared to act so unrestrained, as if he didn't know fear. No matter what, Lin Sun is a great young talent after all. Not only does he have unparalleled attainments in spiritual tattoos, but he can also suppress other talents in martial arts. He is a monster. There were also many people who sighed with emotion and many voices echoed their sentiments. Indeed, I thought it was shocking enough for him to be ranked first on the Spirit Sea Gold ranking. But in just one day, he passed the Heaven Stairway test that no one has passed for hundreds of years. This is just too terrifying. Not only that, didn't you see that Chi was also suppressed by him? With the cultivation of the Sea of Soul's realm, not only was he not defeated, but he even suppressed his opponent. Looking at the entire Green Deer Academy, how many people can do this? Alas, this guy really makes people speechless. His temperament is so cruel and arrogant, but his talent and foundation are so amazing. I can't understand it. Lin's son was completely popular. At least in the Green Deer Academy, people were talking about his deeds everywhere, which even alarmed many big shots. However, the evaluation of him was mixed. Half of it was good and half of it was bad, and half of it was controversial. This was unavoidable. Many people were sneering and thought that Lin's son would be killed sooner or later because he had offended too many people and forces by now. Among the 7 top aristocratic families of the empire, the Hua family, the Song family, the Qin family, the Zhou family, the Qi family, and the Qi family. Except for the Xie family, he had offended the other 6 families. This was too shocking. Who could imagine that a 16-year-old boy who had just entered the Forbidden City for less than a year had offended so many powerful forces one after another? The most important thing was that Lin's son had offended the imperial family more than once. The first time, he forced Marquis Ling Tianhao to kneel down, which shocked the whole world. The second time, he reprimanded Princess Ling Huang in front of her, which embarrassed her. It could be imagined how many opponents and enemies Lin's son had now, which had reached a shocking level. Some people even joked that in the whole Forbidden City, if Lin's son claimed to be the second in the means of offending people, no one dared to claim to be the first. Under such circumstances, many people suspected that Lin's son would definitely suffer a lot of hostility and revenge in the future. Maybe he would be obliterated one day and die prematurely. In fact, it was true. On the second day after Lin's son forced Qiyu to kneel down, students from martial arts school and martial arts school stood out one after another and joined forces to ask the big shots of the school to condemn Lin's son's bad behavior. Lin's son insulted Princess Ling Wang, desecrated the imperial family's reputation, and forced students to kneel down. Such behavior is infuriating. If Lin's son is not punished, we will not let it go. These students were filled with righteous indignation and put on a stance that they could not live under the same sky with Lin's son. They believed that Lin's son had ruined the reputation of the teachers and wantonly slandered and humiliated students. His methods were cruel and outrageous. They must punish him severely, deprive him of his teaching qualification, and expel him from the school as a warning to others. As soon as this storm broke out, not only did it not subside, but it became more and more intense. More and more students joined in. For a moment, Lin's son seemed to have become an unpardonable criminal and was condemned by many students. These students gathered together and made Green Deer School restless. Later, the big shots of the school did not dare to sit back and watch and began to resolve this storm. Therefore, some big shots suggested that it would be better to deprive Lin's son of his teaching qualification and expel him from the teaching to appease the students' anger. There were also many big shots who retorted that Lin's son had not violated the rules of Green Deer School. If he was deprived of his teaching qualification, it would only make people feel bitterly disappointed. In short, this storm was very big and it caused a lot of uproar. In the end, all the questions revolved around whether to expel Lin's son or not. Regarding this, some people were excited and thought that Lin's son would receive the punishment he deserved and be expelled from Green Deer School. There were also some people who were angry and thought that all the accusations against Lin's son were nonsense and that Lin's son was completely framed. Of course, those with a bit of brain knew that the reason why this storm was so big was that there must be someone behind it adding fuel to the fire. Or, from the very beginning, this storm was secretly manipulated by someone. Would the school expel Lin's son? Many students and teachers were paying close attention to this. Chapter 503. Haha, let's see how Lin's son can be arrogant now. In a hall, Zui Yujing laughed heartily. His figure was tall and slender, sitting cross-legged with a kind of soaring spirit. Nearby, Lan Yu, Jin Zhulu, Shui Yun, Shi Yunpeng, and others all smiled. This time, we have mobilized all our forces. The momentum is great, and the public is indignant. It has attracted the attention of the big shots in the school. Lin Sun is doomed to be doomed. Jin Zhulu said coldly. This is what they call the evils they bring upon themselves. Lin Sun is really arrogant to even dare to offend Her Highness Spirit Phoenix and Shiyu. Isn't he just tired of living after eating arsenic? Shi Yinpeng sneered. Lin Sun has extraordinary attainments in spiritual tattoos and extremely dazzling martial arts. What if the school is unwilling to expel him? Lan Yu frowned and asked suddenly. Impossible. Zui Yujing was full of confidence. This time, senior brother Zhao, Jingwen, and I invited some elders of the school to put pressure on the school. I believe the school will never offend us for Lin Sun. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. They didn't expect that in order to completely expel Lin Sun, Zui Yujing and Zhao Jingwen invited some big shots. Immediately, they couldn't help laughing. This time, Lin Sun was really going to suffer. Not long after, a man walked in from outside the hall. He was wearing a jade robe, with starry eyes and a pair of sword-like eyebrows. Standing there with his hands behind his back, he had an awe-inspiring, heroic spirit. It was Zhao Jingwen, a member of the royal family. At the same time, he was also an outstanding talent in martial school. He had occupied the first place in Spirit C Golden List before. But as Gu Yunting came out and Lin Sun returned to Green Deer School, his ranking was broken and now he fell to the second place. Greetings, senior brother Jingwen. Everyone dared not neglect and stood up to greet him. How's it going? Zhao Jingwen asked. Lin Sun's defeat is inevitable. The day he is expelled is the day he dies. Zui Yujing replied resolutely. Yes. Zhao Jingwen appeared very calm and unperturbed. Senior brother Jingwen, do we need to inform Her Highness of Spirit Phoenix and Shiyu? Shui Yin asked. No need. It's just Lin Sun. He's about to die. There's no need to mobilize so many people. It's okay to tell them when the matter is over. Speaking of this, Zhao Jingwen looked at Zui Yujing and said, I heard that your Zhou family has a grudge against Lin family of Heart Cleansing Peak. Since you decide to kill Lin Sun, will your family also deal with Heart Cleansing Peak? Zui Yujing said helplessly. Now, Heart Cleansing Peak has been closed and isolated from the world. I'm afraid it's difficult to deal with them in a short time. Don't worry. They can't hide in it forever. When Lin Sun dies, they are doomed to be leaderless. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Zhao Jingwen muttered. My elders think so too. Zui Yujing smiled. Senior brother Zhou, bad news. Suddenly, a sharp voice rang out. One mole Li Xiaofei ran in, looking flustered and exasperated. What happened? Zui Yujing frowned. The academy has already made a decision. Whoever dares to cause trouble will be expelled from the academy. Li Xiaofei said with a sad face. What? All the people's faces changed. They never expected that such a thing would happen. Was there any change? Even Zhao Jingwen was slightly stunned. It shouldn't be. I asked my uncle to come forward in person. He united more than a dozen big shots in the academy to pressure Lin Sun. Can't they do anything to Lin Sun? Zhao Jingwen's uncle, Zhao Zhanya, was a deputy dean of martial arts school. He had great power and influence. It was incredible that even Zhao Zhanya didn't change the academy's mind and expel Lin Sun. Is that true? Zui Yujing asked in a deep voice. Li Xiaofei quickly promised that it was absolutely true. For a while, the atmosphere in the hall became silent. Everyone's face was gloomy and uncertain. How could this be? They mobilized so many forces and made such a big noise, but they couldn't do anything to Lin Sun? Soon, they found out the specific news. Lin Sun is about to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo alone. This news was like a thunderclap, and it caused Zhao Jingwen, Zui Yujing, and the others to be stunned and be thrown into disorder. If this was true, it was easy to understand why the academy didn't agree to expel Lin Sun. It was so shocking that no one dared to act recklessly. A young spiritual tattoo master who once caused the vision of 9 dragons chant was going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo. Under such circumstances, it was impossible to hurt him, let alone expel him. Damn it, it's really hateful. Jean Joulou and others were unwilling to accept it, and their faces were extremely gloomy. They couldn't accept such a sudden change when they were about to successfully expel Lin Sun. It's impossible. He is only a 16-year-old spiritual tattoo master. How could he be able to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo? This must be false, Lin Sun deliberately said, so in order to ensure that he wouldn't be expelled from the academy. Zui Yujing took a deep breath and said coldly. Everyone also came to their senses. How old was Lin Sun? Even if his attainments in spiritual tattoos were strong, how could he refine a suit of spiritual tattoo? Good boy. In order not to be deprived of his teaching qualification, he used such a treacherous trick to deceive the big shots of the academy. What an evil heart. Jean Joulou gnashed his teeth. No matter what, the big shots of the academy believed him. Now, even if Lin Sun couldn't do it, who would dare to expel him? Shui Yin sighed. I've heard that Lin Sun will start his closed-door training in the next few days and refine a suit of spiritual tattoo on the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower alone. In order not to let him be disturbed by the outside world, the Academy has made a decision to ensure Lin Sun's safety with all its strength. And it has made it clear that anyone who dares to oppose Lin Sun at this time is against the whole Academy. When they heard the news, Zhao Jingwen and Zui Yujing fell into complete silence with mixed feelings. Lin Sun escaped a disaster again. If he really succeeded in refining a suit of spiritual tattoo, it would be more and more difficult for anyone to deal with him in the future, Zhao Jingwen murmured. He was very clear about how amazing the value of a suit of spiritual tattoo was, and how noble the spiritual tattooist who could refine a suit of spiritual tattoo would be. At least in the entire Xiao Empire, almost no one would choose to oppose such a person unless they were enemies with deep-sea blood feud. Not to mention killing such a person. Even if they wanted to harm him, they would encounter countless obstacles and troubles. What should we do? Jean Joulou and others couldn't help asking, completely confused by the news. Do you think Lin Sun can succeed? Zhao Jingwen's expression returned to calmness, and he asked thoughtfully. Absolutely not. The answer was surprisingly unanimous. They didn't believe Lin Sun could succeed at all. What a joke. A 16-year-old young spiritual tattooist was going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo? Nobody believed he could succeed. Throughout the ages, there wasn't a single similar example. In that case, it's easy. Let's wait for him to fail, and then teach him a lesson that he can't bear. A cold light surged in Zhao Jingwen's eyes. He didn't believe that he couldn't kill Lin Sun. He was just a remnant of a declining clan, but he dared to blaspheme and slander the majesty of the royal family. If he was not killed, he was destined to become a stain on the royal family of the empire. Lin Sun is going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo by himself. When this news came out, it was like a thunder from the 9th heaven, making the whole Green Deer School seething and extremely sensational. A suit of spiritual tattoo. It was a kind of unparalleled treasure, mysterious and powerful. There were not many spiritual tattooists who could refine such a treasure in the whole empire. But now, Lin Sun, a 16-year-old young spiritual tattooist, announced that he was going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo. How could people not be shocked? Is it true or not? Many people were scrambling to ask. After all, this was just too shocking, and it was simply unimaginable. Lin Sun must have sensed that the situation was not good and deliberately released this news to avoid being expelled from the school. This was the opinion of many people, because in recent days, many students and big shots were denouncing Lin Sun and wanted to deprive him of his teaching qualification and expel him from the school. At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly announced that he was going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo, which would naturally make people think that it was a means of self-protection rather than a real suit of spiritual tattoo. It's hard to say. I heard that Master Shunto also appeared and specially let Lin Sun use the ninth floor of the spiritual cultivation tower. Some people also thought that Lin Sun had an unimaginable talent in spiritual tattoos because he had once caused the Nine Dragons chant. Maybe he really had a chance to refine his suit of spiritual tattoo this time. In a word, the Green Deer School was completely shocked. Both teachers and students were attracted by this news and started a heated discussion. Later, the news spread out of Green Deer School at an exaggerated speed and spread throughout the Forbidden City. Refine a suit of spiritual tattoo? Is Lin Sun crazy? If he can do it, I can eat shit. How can a 16-year-old boy refine such a peerless weapon as a suit of spiritual tattoo? He is so arrogant and ignorant. It's Lin Sun again. Why is there so much news about him these days? This guy is too good at making trouble. Unlike in the past, when they learned that Lin Sun was going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo, almost everyone in the Forbidden City doubted it. They thought that with Lin Sun's current ability, it was almost impossible for him to do it. But there were also many people who paid close attention to it. Lin Sun was already a well-known figure in the Forbidden City. Many almost impossible things had happened to him. This time, since he dared to do this, he must have a certain degree of confidence. Chapter 504. The golden vine was full of spiritual clouds, shining as if it was cast in gold. The patterns on it were sharp and dazzling. The crimson blood cloud astral rock floated in the air and emitted strands of scarlet light. It was beautiful and alluring. The purple copper coiling dragon iron was translucent and lustrous, surrounded by purple clouds. There seemed to be a dragon emerging inside it. The horn of the one-legged ox, half a foot long, was green and simple. However, a faint roar spread from it, shaking the void layer by layer. Dozens of rare spiritual materials appeared, all of which were the core materials for refining the armor of spiritual tattoos. Apart from that, there were also over 1,000 types of supplementary spirit materials of various colors that were dazzling and dazzling. Some were needed to smelt spirit ink, some were needed to set up formation patterns, and there were all sorts of them. Lin Sun looked ethereal and tranquil. He focused on the spiritual materials in front of him, sifting and dividing them into different categories. On the 9th floor of the spiritual refining tower, there was a tripod furnace with 3 feet and 2 handles. It had a round mouth and was marked with the breath of time. The tripod furnace was named Cyan. It was an important weapon in the yard of spiritual tattoos. It was specially used to smelt spiritual materials. The dense Taoist patterns in it had incredible magical effects. When all the spiritual materials were sorted out, Lin Sun's eyes fell on the cyan tripod furnace. At this moment, his body and mind, both inside and outside, entered an extremely ethereal and calm state. He was spotless and had no distracting thoughts, just like the moon in the blue sea. Lin Sun had been preparing for this moment for a long time. Now he was finally going to refine his first armor of spiritual tattoos, but he was not excited at all. No worries, no joy, no sorrow. The wind and rain in the outside world, the suppressed hatred and distracting thoughts in his heart were no longer important at this moment. Let's get started. Lin Sun stepped forward and began to refine. Every step and every detail had been replayed in his mind countless times. When he started, everything seemed so natural, calm, and unhurried. The tripod furnace glowed and produced a roar, which resounded in the empty 9th floor of the spiritual refining tower. Lin Sun buried himself here, smelting spiritual materials, boiling spiritual ink, washing spiritual tattoos. He was so focused and serious that he forgot everything else. In the outside world, the storm was raging and undercurrents were surging. In these 2 days, Green Deer Academy had become the focus of attention of countless practitioners, and all the major forces had cast their eyes on it. A 16-year-old young spiritual rune master was going to forge a set of spiritual rune battle armor. For ordinary people, this matter might seem too remote and unreal. They only knew that the success of Lin's action was doomed to be slim. As for how unlikely it was, no one knew, because the spiritual tattoo armor was too rare. Because no one knew how difficult it was to refine it, People felt it was unreachable and couldn't believe that Lin's son could succeed. But for some experienced bigwigs, they were very clear about how amazing the spiritual tattoo armor was. It was no exaggeration to say that even in an upper-class aristocratic family, if they could master a set of armor with spiritual tattoos, they would have the power to deter their enemies. If a lower-class aristocratic family had a suit of armor with spiritual tattoos, they could even change their situation and compete with the middle-class aristocratic families. This was the power and influence of the spiritual tattoo armor. It was said that if a practitioner of Tao Insight Realm had a suit of armor with spiritual tattoos, he could cross a big realm and compete with the practitioners of Reincarnation Developing Realm. Therefore, when people learned that Lin's son wanted to refine this treasure, it attracted worldwide attention and set off an unprecedented sensation. Even if most people didn't believe that he could succeed, they still couldn't stop paying attention to this matter. The spiritual tattoo armor. Having one could change the pattern of a force. It wouldn't be moved. Green Deer Academy became the eye of the storm. Russell, 9 Fireland beasts, pulled a chariot, crushing the clouds and landing in front of the gate of Green Deer Academy. The chariot was gorgeous and colorful. A middle-aged man in a purple robe walked out with his hands behind his back. He was as majestic and unshakable as a holy mountain. When he opened and closed his eyes, lightning shot out, shocking all directions. Qin Baoji, a great practitioner at the peak of Tao Insight Realm of Qi family, in the Fire Lin carriage. The practitioners who paid attention to the movement here couldn't help but be shocked. Qi Baoji, a powerful figure in the upper-class aristocratic family, was like the sun at noon. Qin Baoji entered Green Deer Academy without being stopped at all. Whoosh! A slender figure on a spirit boat floated in the sky, attracting countless people's attention. He stood straight, and his clothes fluttered in the wind. Wisps of rainbow light derived from the Great Way appeared around him, as if he blended with heaven and earth, making people unable to see his true appearance. Marquis Baijan of Zhuo family. Some practitioners of the older generation were surprised and recognized the identity of the man. He was Zhuo Fuguang of Baijan Realm, an influential figure of Tao Insight Realm in the upper-class aristocratic family of Zhuo family. He was a powerful figure who had won hundreds of battles and killed hundreds of dark barbarians. All his deeds were bloody and shocking. He was given the title of Marquis Baijan by the current emperor. Many practitioners were shocked that Zhuo Fuguang of Baijan Realm also came. This day was destined to be turbulent in Green Deer Academy. Big shots came one after another, as if they had already agreed to come. Each of them could be called a giant with great power. Obviously, they were also attracted by the spiritual tattoo armor Lin's son was refining. Otherwise, it was impossible to see them in the past. Rumble! On the horizon, there was a rumbling sound that sounded like the beating of a drum. Banners fluttered in the wind, and guards cleared the way. 16 servants dressed in palace attire crowded around a bronze carriage like stars surrounding the moon, and they were walking over. The bronze chariot was densely covered with mountains, rivers, the sun, and the moon. It was sacred and solemn, like the arrival of a king. As soon as this group of people appeared, all the people present fell into silence and great shock. Purple gold bronze chariot. This was the chariot of Zhao Jiuxiao, the king of Xi, the only one in the entire empire. The king of Xi was a legendary and powerful lord. It was said that he had already possessed the monstrous spiritual power of Reincarnation Developing Realm. He presided over a region with great power. And now, the prince was here as well. The purple gold bronze chariot stopped, and a thin middle-aged man in a gray robe walked out. His face was as sharp as a knife, and he was resolute and unobtrusive. But his thin body seemed to hide a volcano. Once it erupted, it was destined to burn the mountains and rivers. When these big shots came one after another, the outside world became more and more shocked and attracted unprecedented attention. Everyone speculated that they must have come for Lin's son. In Green Deer School, the atmosphere was also unusual, especially in the spiritual tattoo yard. All the teachers and students had suspended classes, and there was no tranquility and peace in the past. Because today, big shots of the Empire arrived one after another in front of the spiritual refining tower, paying attention to the same thing. Lin Sun's spiritual refining action. In front of the spiritual refining tower, seats had already been set up for those big shots. Shen Tuo stood alone in the distance, looking at the big shots who came uninvited on the seats one after another, and he was very worried. In order to resolve the action launched by a group of students to expel Lin, Shen Tuo had to leak the news in advance that Lin was going to refine the spiritual tattoo armor. It was also because of this news that the school changed its attitude and helped Lin Sun to resolve an invisible blow in revenge. But Shen Tuo didn't expect that because of leaking the news in advance, it attracted attention from all sides and made these big shots come one after another. Even the top officials of the school were alarmed and arranged for Shen Tuo to deal with this matter properly. Brother Shen, Yu Beidu, a senior spiritual tattoo master of the commune of spiritual tattooists, and Cheng Jing, a spiritual tattoo master of the Academy of Spiritual Implements, also came. You're also here. Shen Tuo didn't dare to let his imagination run wild and greeted them. Is Lin Sun confident in refining this time? Yu Beidu came up and asked, which immediately attracted a lot of attention. This question was the most concerned of all. You have to ask Lin Sun about this. Shen Tuo answered casually. He didn't know how many times he had been asked these days. He didn't answer perfunctorily, but he really didn't dare to make any clear answer. I understand. After all, it's the first time to refine a spiritual tattoo armor. No one can guarantee success. Yu Beidu nodded. Together with Cheng Jing and Shen Tuo, he had witnessed the process of Lin Sun's certification as a spiritual tattoo master and the magnificent vision of Nine Dragons chant. So he knew better than others how amazing Lin Sun's attainments in spiritual tattoos were. But when he heard that Lin Sun was going to refine a spiritual tattoo armor, he was still shocked, so he hurried here to see it with his own eyes. Something is wrong. Why are so many people here? On the other side, Cheng Jing frowned and said, Are they all here to see Lin Sun make a fool of himself? Shen Tuo's heart trembled, and he said vaguely, It's hard to say. In fact, he had already seen some clues. The reason why so many big shots were attracted today was definitely not just to see Lin Sun refine a spiritual weapon. At this time, there were more and more big shots in the field, each of whom had a great background. Ordinary people couldn't be qualified to attend them at all. Because this was Green Deer School, not everyone could come here as they wanted. Buzz. Suddenly, a magnificent wave came from the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower, spreading out and echoing between heaven and earth like the ringing of a bell. Suddenly, all the eyes in the field were attracted to it. The cyan furnace has been activated. It seems that the boy has started to take action. Someone whispered in the seat. This man had a thin face and sharp eyes. His long gray hair was neatly combed. He was Chu Shanha, the vice dean of Spiritual Tattoo Yard. In order to attack and retaliate against Lin Sun and help Chu Haidong, Chu Shanha had set up a trap to make Lin Sun unable to establish a foothold in Spiritual Tattoo Yard. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun finally repaired the sword of apocalypse of the Empress, which made Chu Shanha extremely embarrassed. In the end, Lin Sun lost his face and had to retreat temporarily and leave Spiritual Tattoo Yard. Unexpectedly, Chu Shanha also came today. If he succeeds this time, he can make amends for his mistakes, and we won't pursue him for slandering and desecrating the dignity of the royal family. If he fails, don't blame me for being rude. Next to Chu Shanha, a dignified old man said indifferently, with a touch of coldness flashing in his eyes. The old man was Zhao Zhanye, the vice dean of martial arts yard. He was also a big shot in the royal family. Obviously, he didn't come here just to watch Lin Sun refine spiritual weapons. Chapter 505. Zhao Zhanye's words shocked all the people present. Obviously, the vice dean of martial arts courtyard didn't believe that Lin Sun could refine the armor with spiritual tattoos at all. He came here to take this opportunity to suppress Lin Sun. Haha, Brother Zhao is right. Although Lin's son is talented, he is undisciplined and unscrupulous. He has a bad conduct and a bad record. Such a talent, no matter how outstanding he is destined to be a scourge. Chushana chuckled. As the vice dean of Spiritual Tattoo Courtyard, he completely denied Lin's son. His intention was clear. This made many people keenly aware that Lin Sun's spiritual weapon refining operation might develop into a disaster against Lin's son. Unless he could really refine the armor with spiritual tattoos, his situation would be worrying. That's right. Green Deer School is not a place to hide filth. A young man like Lin Sun who goes astray will become a scourge sooner or later if we don't punish and discipline him. On the other side, Qin Baoji, a great practitioner at the peak of Dantian realm of Qin family, also spoke. His pupils were as cold as a sharp blade, and his momentum was oppressive. If he dares to deceive us, we will not spare him. Suddenly, a thunderous voice rumbled, which made all the people present change their expressions. It was Zhuofu Guang, the Marquis of 100 Battles. He was surrounded by the aura of the Great Way, sitting there like a king stepping on mountains of corpses and seas of blood. For a moment, the whole place was silent. From Zhao Zhenya's words to Chu Shanhe, Qin Baoji, and Zhuofu Guang's words, everyone could see that they came for Lin Sun without any concealment at all. Shen Tuo's face was gloomy. Lin Sun just began to refine the armor with spiritual tattoos, but these big shots denied and threatened him one after another, which made him feel a chill in his heart. He realized that something was wrong. What crime did Lin's son commit? Why do you all want to teach him a lesson regardless of your status? Suddenly, a voice sounded, which surprised all the people present. On such an occasion, someone dared to refute several big shots? A handsome and dignified young man walked over with large strides. His bearing was heroic, and he had a kind of domineering aura that looked down on the mountains and rivers. Ning Meng, the grandson of the Iron Blood King. Many people recognized the identity of the young man, and they couldn't help but look surprised. Kid, what is this place? Is there a place for you to interrupt? The great cultivator of the Qin clan, Qin Baoji, grunted coldly. His gaze was like a sharp blade that tore through the sky, and it was terrifying. What a joke. This is my Green Deer Academy. Old man, you came uninvited and you dare to lecture me? Ning Ming shouted, which made everyone tremble. This guy was too strong. Did he really think that with the power of the Blood King, he dared to look down on the Qin family? Qin Baoji's face darkened. Before he could say anything, Zhuofu Guang, the Marquis of 100 Battles, waved his hand and said calmly, Brother Qin, don't stoop to their level. As he said, he looked at Ning Meng faintly and said, Little guy, why don't you know the rules at all? Is this how your parents teach you? Retreat quickly. Don't make a mistake. Ning Meng was furious. Are you saying that I have no manners? Zhuofu Guang frowned and said unhappily, Lad, even your father wouldn't dare to speak like this. Do you really think we won't dare to punish you? Rumble. An oppressive power spread out and pressed down on Ning Meng fiercely, trying to frighten him and force him to stop talking. Ning Meng's face changed. Old man, how dare you? Zhuofu Guang sneered. How dare you, young man, be so arrogant? Today, I will teach you a lesson on behalf of your parents. I will let you know the rules. As he spoke, his power was like a mountain pressing down fiercely. This was a Marquis of 100 Battles who had fought in the frontier and killed hundreds of important figures of alien races. His divine power was matchless, and his hands were stained with blood. It could be imagined how terrifying his power was. It was not something that a sea spirit realm could resist. Hee, you're so powerful. Zhuofu Guang, we haven't seen each other for many years. How dare you teach my grandson a lesson on behalf of me? Suddenly, a thunderous shout resounded, and it shook the ears of all the cultivators present, causing them to see stars and their expressions to change abruptly. It was just a voice, but it was like a heavy hammer that made their hearts tremble. Swish! A figure like a sacred mountain appeared in the field. His white hair was messy, and his hair was like a halberd. When his eyes opened and closed, There were terrifying visions of mountains of corpses, seas of blood, and stars sinking and moon falling. This was definitely a terrifying expert. With his arrival, the whole world was filled with a murderous aura. The void wailed and the wind and clouds surged. Everyone was shocked and looked incredulous. Blood Iron King Ning Bugue, a king who lived by fighting. Even if he died, he would rest his head on a mountain of corpses, lie in a sea of blood, and sleep with the sky and the earth. There were at least 800 masters who died in his hands, if not 1,000. He was definitely a king who killed his way out. His ferocity was matchless, and his name shook the empire. It was even rumored that the 5 tiger generals of the empire combined would not be as powerful as the Blood Iron King. However, no one expected that such a legendary figure of the empire would return to the Forbidden City at this time and appear in Green Deer School. Ning Bugue, why are you here? Zhuofu Guang suddenly stood up. His eyes were as sharp as blades, and he looked a little surprised. The other big shots present were also moved. Ning Bugue had been stationed in the western border of the empire for 100 years and had not returned to the Forbidden City. Why did he return this time? What? Don't you welcome me back? Ning Bugue's voice was rough, and his words were like thunder. He did not hide his ferocity at all, and there was a terrible momentum like a tiger that could swallow thousands of miles. How dare we? Brother Ning, please take a seat. Zhao Zhanya stood up and said in a low voice. As the deputy dean of martial arts school and a big shot of the royal family, his status was quite high. You guys only know how to bully the younger generation. I don't want to sit with you. As he said, he grabbed Ning Meng and sat on the ground, which shocked all the people present. This iron-blooded king, who had long been fierce and mighty, was really as overbearing as the legend said. He treated all the big shots present as nothing and didn't give them any face. Zhao Zhanya could not help but feel a trace of haze between his eyebrows. Hey, even if you come, so what? Lin Sun has made a terrible mistake. It's not enough for you to protect him. So Fu Guang sneered. He had calmed down. Not only him, but also Chu Shanhe, Qin Baoji, and some big shots who had a good relationship with him nearby thought so. Alas, Duke Daochen fought for the empire. Even though he died, his heroic spirit lives on forever, and he receives the reverence of all. I never imagined that only a few years have passed. The only child left behind by Duke Daochen has become a thorn in the side of some people. It's truly disappointing. At this time, someone let out a long sigh. Although the sound was not loud, it clearly rang in everyone's ears. An extremely fat and huge middle-aged man walked over slowly. From a distance, he looked like a hill moving horizontally, which was extremely eye-catching. The owner of Keystone Business, Fortune God Sure. All the people present opened their eyes wide. The famous Fortune Godsure was also here today, and from his tone, it was obvious that he was here to support Lin Sun. The faces of Zhao Zhanya, Chu Shanhe, Zhuofu Guang, and Qin Baoji turned gloomy. They did not expect that not only would Ning Bugue appear out of nowhere, but another god of fortune would also appear. Brother Sure, come and sit down. It's not easy to catch you. Let's have a good talk. Ning Bugue said with a smile. Fortune God Sure suddenly laughed and was not polite. His huge body, which was like a mountain, sat down next to him. At this time, people saw Shiryu behind Fortune God Sure. The reason why they did not notice him just now was that Fortune God Sure's body was too fat. Like a hill, many people were thoughtful. They knew that Shiryu, Ning Meng, and Lin Sun were friends. The appearance of Ning Bugue and Fortune God Sure today must have something to do with them. The situation was a bit delicate. Some people wanted to target Lin Sun, and some wanted to protect him. It was just a refining operation, but it set off a silent storm and a surging undercurrent. Lord Daochun was a hero who was admired by countless people in the empire. I also admire him very much, but I never thought that his descendants were so unbearable and did so many bad deeds that angered God and people. If they are not disciplined, they will only tarnish Lord Daochun's prestige and bring shame to Lin family. Zhao Zhanya said with no expression. Even if Ning Bugue and Fortune God Sure came, They could not change his mind. What do you mean by angering God and people? Why do I hear that some people have been secretly targeting and suppressing Lin Sun since he entered the Forbidden City? I think someone doesn't want Lord Daoqian's bloodline to live in the world. Along with the conversation, two figures appeared in the field again. One was a middle-aged man with black hair and broad eyebrows. He was majestic and powerful. The other was a thin and short old man with a goatee and a smile on his face. He seemed amiable and didn't have any imposing aura to speak of. However, when they saw the two of them enter the arena, a wave of restlessness arose in the surroundings, and they were endlessly surprised and bewildered. That was because the middle-aged man with black hair and beard was the overlord of the East Sea, the king of the East Sea, Yi Qingtian. The other old man with a goatee was Gong Bupo, the first elder of the Tumbler family. Perhaps the young people didn't have a deep understanding of their reputations, but to the great figures present, these two were ferocious figures that caused others to fear them. They'd made a name for themselves many years ago, and they reigned supreme over an area. There was no doubt that Yi Qi and Gong Ming were following Yi Qingtian and Gong Bupo. At this point, everyone could see that Blood King Ning Bugue, Fortune God Shi, King of Donghai Yi Qingtian, and Gong Bupo were all here to protect Lin Sun. This shocked people and made them feel that the situation was getting more and more delicate. It seemed that they were incompatible and in conflict with each other. Even Zhao Zhanya and Chu Shana frowned at this time. They felt it was a little tricky. They didn't expect that they would attract so many fierce characters just to deal with a surviving member of Lin family. The refining has just begun. Why are you so competitive? Let's observe quietly. A 16-year-old boy is going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoos. This kind of thing is rare since ancient times. Amidst this deathly silent and tense atmosphere, a light sigh resounded. A middle-aged man with a face as sharp as a knife, dressed in a gray robe, and had an oppressive and firm appearance, had unknowingly appeared on the scene. He seemed inconspicuous, but everyone had an illusion that there was a volcano hidden in his thin body, which would erupt at any time and burn the mountains and rivers. Suddenly, Zhao Zhanya, Chu Shanha, Ning Bugay, Fortune God Shi, and all the big shots present stood up at the same time and didn't dare to sit there anymore. This was a kind of power that only belonged to Zhao Jiuxiao, the Sea Conqueror. Chapter 506. As soon as Zhao Jiuxiao appeared, all the big shots present stood up to greet him. His power was like the sun and the moon illuminating the mountains and rivers, which shocked everyone present. At this point, the disputes in the field were silently suppressed. Zhao Zhanya and Chu Shana all looked relaxed because Zhao Jiuxiao was also from the imperial family, which was equivalent to being in the same camp as them. But Blood King Ning Bugue and Fortune God Shi all frowned and remained silent. In the following time, some big shots arrived one after another, such as the superior aristocratic Hua clan, Song clan, Qi clan, and so on. As soon as they arrived, they were warmly welcomed by Zhao Zhanya and Chu Shanha. Now they all knew that Lin Sun had also offended these clans. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Zhao Zhanya naturally would not miss such an opportunity to win over friends. In this regard, Ning Bugue and Fortune God Shi still remained silent, but everyone could see that the resistance would only be greater and greater if they wanted to protect Lin Sun. In fact, the development of the situation to this point was completely beyond the expectation of most people present, because this was the first day of Lin Sun's refining. Even if everyone thought that his chances of success this time were very slim, no one dared to be sure that Lin Sun would fail. Under such circumstances, it was very abnormal that Zhao Zhanya, Chu Shanha, Zuofu Wang, and Qin Baoji took action aggressively to suppress Lin Sun. Weren't they worried that if Lin Sun succeeded, it would embarrass them? Or were they absolutely sure that Lin Sun's refining operation was doomed to end in failure? This was shocking. If it was the second case, then it proved that Zhao Zhanya and others came prepared this time. This was also what Ning Bugue and Fortune God Shi were worried about. Zhao Zhanya and others were too confident and had a posture of winning. If Lin Sun failed, the consequences would be very serious. Master Shin Tuo, how sure do you think Lin Sun is this time? Fortune God, sure, transmitted a voice to Shin Tuo. I can't make a prediction. Shin Tuo suddenly smiled bitterly. How could he dare to answer this question with certainty? It seems that the situation is not good. Fortune God sure pondered. It depends on the situation. As far as I know, it will take at least 1 month to refine a piece of armor with spiritual tattoos. No matter what the final result is, I will go all out this time to save the only seedling left by Duke Daochen. Blood King Ning Bugue's voice was firm and determined. Of course, he was sending a telepathic message to Fortune Godshur, Yi Qing Tian, and Gongbu Pe. He was not worried that others would hear him. On the other side, Zhao Zhanya also transmitted his voice. This time we have gathered a large number of people to come here, and we have already received attention from all sides. All eyes are on us. I do not wish for any unforeseen events to occur. Chu Shanha suddenly smiled, full of confidence. Brother Zhao, don't worry. Even if this boy has the means to refine spiritual tattoo armor, he is doomed to lose. Zhao Zhanya squinted at Chu Shanha and nodded. Then I'm relieved. Lin Sun has a special identity. We can't allow him to grow up. Otherwise, it will be a disaster for our empire. As time went by, more than 10 days had passed in a flash. In the 9th floor of the spiritual refining tower, the furnace roared constantly, and waves of fluctuation spread. From time to time, colorful and dazzling light could be seen rushing out like a divine rainbow, which was comparable to a miracle. Such a scene also caused a lot of uproar in the field these days. There were endless discussions about it, and even some spiritual tattooists joined in to analyze and explain the scene. Look, it's the smelting stage now. To refine a piece of armor with spiritual tattoos, smelting spiritual materials is an extremely crucial step. As we all know, each spiritual material is unique and full of spirituality. It is extremely difficult to completely melt them into a furnace and turn them into a tool embryo. That's right. In history, many spiritual rune masters failed at this step. The reason was that they couldn't smelt a perfect spirit tool embryo. Many big shots listened with relish, and someone couldn't help asking, Masters, can you see whether Lin Sun can refine a perfect tool embryo this time? At present, there seems to be no problem. It depends on whether he can control the smelting step in the following time. On this point alone, Lin Sun's performance has exceeded my expectation. It was Yu Beidu, a senior spiritual tattooist from the headquarters of the commune of spiritual tattooists, who spoke, which caused a lot of exclamations in the field and increased their confidence in Lin Sun's refining this time. After all, according to Yu Beidu, it was already amazing and extremely difficult for a young spiritual tattooist like Lin Sun to achieve this step. But in this exclamation, Chu Shanha sneered, Haha, I don't think so. If I'm right, it's impossible for Lin Sun to smelt a perfect tool embryo at this stage. This surprised all the people present. Chu Shanha came from the Chu family, one of the 3 major spiritual tattooist families, and he was also the deputy dean of the spiritual tattoo yard and a senior spiritual tattooist. Did he have some clues since he dared to make such a clear statement at this moment? This old guy is really mean. Ning Ming was angry. Last time Lin Sun repaired the sword of apocalypse of the Empress, which embarrassed the old guy and made him lose his face. He naturally wants Lin to fail this time. Sure, you frowned and said, This old guy needs to be taught a lesson. At that time, there was no one in the entire spiritual tattoo yard who could repair the sword of apocalypse. Only Lin Sun did this step, which was undoubtedly a great help to him. But he didn't appreciate it and deliberately targeted and suppressed Lin Sun with others. It's really disgusting. Yi Qi looked gloomy. Brother Chu, do you have any basis for this? Even Shen Tuo was a little displeased and questioned Chu Shanha. Humph, since I dare to say so, I must have noticed something wrong. If you don't believe me, just wait and see. Chu Shanha snorted and didn't bother to explain. He seemed to be fearless and confident, which made everyone in the field suspicious. Was Lin Sun going to fail this time in the smelting stage? This was not good. Boom. As if to confirm Chu Shanha's words, An explosion-like roar suddenly sounded on the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower. Soon after, the light that filled the sky dimmed, and the divine rainbows shattered, turning into a rain of light. Not long after, the entire 9th floor of the Spirit Refinement Pagoda fell into silence. There was no longer the rumbling of the cauldron, and there were no more dazzling scenes. All the people present were shocked and opened their eyes wide. How could this be? Is he really going to fail at this step? Shin Tuo's heart trembled and his face suddenly changed. Even spiritual tattoo masters like Yu Beidou and Chungjing were shocked and couldn't believe it. Did he fail? Ha, what did I say just now? Didn't it come true? Chu Shana laughed. I've said that Lin Sun has no ability to refine armors with spiritual tattoos at all. All the people present looked sideways and talked about it. Many people felt sorry for Lin Sun, and some people gloated and sneered. Ning Bu Gui and Fortune God sure all looked dignified. Although they knew that Lin Sun had little hope of success this time, they still couldn't believe that Lin Sun would fail at the smelting stage. Well, go and invite the big shots here. Lin Sun's defeat is inevitable. It's time to settle old scores with him. Chu Shanhe gave the order with the look of a winner. These days, some big shots left, and some big shots came. With their status, it was impossible for them to wait here bitterly. Zhao Jiuxiao, the Lord of Zhenhai, and Zhao Zhanya, the Vice Dean of Martial Arts Yard, had left a few days ago. The atmosphere was dead silent for a while. Did Lin Sun fail? Ning Ming ensured you couldn't accept this result. But for those big shots who were hostile to Lin Sun, this was undoubtedly the best ending. When those bigwigs returned to the field, Lin Sun was doomed to suffer. Shen Tuo's face also became gloomy, and he murmured, "How could this be? With his ability, smelting embryos is not difficult for him at all. Did some accident happen? Before long, Zhao Jiuxiao, Zhao Zhanya, Zhuafu Wang, Qin Baoji, and other big shots arrived one after another, making the atmosphere more and more mysterious. Alas, I didn't expect that he failed. Zhao Jiuxiao, the Lord of Zhenhai, sighed. His attitude was the most intriguing. It seemed that he came purely to watch a refining operation without any other purpose. But as long as one thought about his identity as a big shot in the imperial family, it was impossible for him to help Lin Sun. Zhao Zhanya, Chu Shanhe, and others all smiled. This result made them completely relieved. Next, they only needed to consider how to deal with Lin Sun. Lin Sun, since you have failed, come out and face the reality. Chu Shanhe shouted, and his voice was like thunder, resounding through the world. This damn old thing. Can't wait to deal with Lin Sun. Ning Ming was furious. Shiryu and others all frowned and worried. There was no doubt that this was the worst result. If they wanted to protect Lin Sun later, there would be many twists and turns and difficulties. It could be seen from the looks of Zhao Zhanya and Chu Shanhe that they would never let go of this opportunity to suppress Lin Sun. For a while, the atmosphere in the field was tense to the extreme. Everyone had a premonition that a storm against Lin Sun was coming. Since he entered the Forbidden City, he had offended many great forces, such as Hua family, Song family, Qi family, Zhua family, Qin family, Chu family, and the Imperial family. Today, almost all the forces of these great forces gathered here. Obviously, they were going to settle accounts with Lin Sun together. Lin Sun was doomed. This was the hunch of everyone present. Even if Ning Bugui and Fortune God sure try to stop him, they might not be able to protect him. Lin Sun, are you afraid? If you don't come out, don't blame me for sending someone to invite you out. Chu Shanhe shouted with a cold look. He emphasized the word invite, which was full of threat. Damn it! Ning Ming and Shiryu gritted their teeth secretly. Chu Shanhe had gone too far. Everyone looked at each other, but no one dared to stop Chu Shanhe. In this tense atmosphere, Lin Sun's calm voice sounded in the field. Chapter 507. Everyone was dumbfounded by his words. Why did Lin Sun still dare to challenge Chu Shanhe at this time? At this time, people finally saw clearly that Lin Sun was standing on the top of the spiritual refining tower. His figure was straight, and his clothes were fluttering in the wind. It seemed that he was overlooking all living beings. "Little guy, why don't you get down and admit your guilt?" Chushana's face darkened, and he shouted. These words were too impolite. It seemed that he wanted to suppress Lin Sun and punish him. "Old bastard, can you afford the consequences of delaying my refining?" Lin Sun's counterattack was equally impolite. In front of so many big shots, he directly scolded Chu Shanhe as an old bastard, which shocked all the people present. They murmured in their hearts that this guy was really as bold as the legend said. "Bastard, you have failed in refining, but you still don't repent. Instead, you dare to contradict me. Do you really think we dare not punish you?" Chu Shanhe was so angry that his face was livid and his eyes were murderous. "Lin Sun, we won't allow you to make trouble today. Come down quickly and wait for punishment," Zhao Zhanya said coldly. His pupils were full of cold electricity, which was frightening. "Young man, don't struggle anymore. You should have seen the situation clearly. Don't force us to catch you by ourselves." Zhuofu Wang, Marquis of 100 Battles, said murderously. Next to him, Qin Baoji, Chu Shanhe, and others also looked unkind. They looked at Lin Sun as if he was dead. If it weren't for Green Deer School, they would have already taken action and suppressed Lin Sun. "Lin Sun, you have failed. If you confess your guilt now, you may have a chance to live. Come down quickly." Some big shots from Hua family, Song family, and Qi family also shouted. For a moment, Lin Sun became a sinner condemned by thousands of people, filling the atmosphere with a sense of mutual hostility. Many people sighed in their hearts. No matter how evil Lin Sun was, he would not be able to turn the situation around today. Ning Meng, Sure you and others were so angry that they gritted their teeth. These old guys were really bullies. What do they think of Lin Sun? A sinner? Guys, you are too impatient, aren't you? Your father wants to see who dares to bully Duke Daochen's descendant today. Suddenly, the Blood King, Ning Bugue, stood up. His pupils emitted cold electricity, and his iron-blooded murderous aura soared into the sky, causing many people's expressions to change. What crime did Lin Sun commit to make you dislike him so much? Fortune God Sure also sighed and stood up. His figure was huge, like a hill rising from the ground, giving people an indescribable pressure. On the other side, Yi Qingtian and Gong Bupo also rose to their feet. Their expressions were indifferent as they glanced at Zhao Zhanya, Chu Shanhe, and the others from afar. Instantly, the situation in the surroundings became even more tense. The air seemed as if it had frozen, and it caused everyone to be unable to catch their breaths. These were all great characters that could shake an entire region, and there was no lack of giant-level existences with frightening techniques. At this moment, they were confronting each other. This invisible pressure was like a volcano that was about to erupt, causing everyone to shiver in fear. One side wanted to suppress Lin Sun, and the other side wanted to protect Lin Sun. The situation was very clear, and it depended on the final result. What crime? This boy's misdeeds are obvious to all in the world. He is comparable to a scourge. If we don't suppress him today, he will definitely poison the world and bring disaster to the world in the future. Zhao Zhanya snorted coldly. He was not afraid of Ning Bugue, Fortune God Sure, and the others at all. Lin Sun, since you have failed in refining spiritual weapons, hurry up and come down. It's time to put an end to what happened today. At the same time, Chu Shanhe's eyes were as sharp as a blade, coldly staring at Lin Sun. Until now, Lin Sun was still standing on the top of the spiritual cultivation tower, looking down at them. This attitude made him furious. Lin Sun, come down. Today, I will protect you at the cost of my life. Ning Bugue said indifferently, and his momentum became more and more terrifying. As a king who had fought on the battlefield for hundreds of years and trampled on the corpses of countless enemies, his resolute statement, this time, moved all the people present. Come down. Although I am unbearable, I will never tolerate you being wronged. Even Shun Tuo spoke out, which surprised many people. They didn't expect that Lin Sun, the only son of Lin family with little power, could get so much support. Humph! Zhao Zhanya snorted coldly. He was very dissatisfied with this. But no matter what, They would never let go of this opportunity to suppress Lin's son today. They must completely kill him before he rose. At the top of the spiritual cultivation tower, Lin Sun looked down at the big shots in the field and glanced over them one by one. When he saw Ning Bugue, fortune god Sure, and the others, he couldn't help feeling warm in his heart. He did not expect that he would be protected by these elders at this time. When his eyes swept over Zhao Zhanya, Chu Shanhe, and the others, his pupils had become indifferent and cold, without concealing his hostility. Finally, he smiled slightly, showing his snow-white teeth, and said, "When I finish refining the armor with spiritual tattoos, I will stand in front of you and ask you why you punish me." His words were calm and indifferent, but it shocked all the people present. Didn't he fail in refining spiritual weapons? Why did he say so? Zhao Zhanya could not help but be stunned. He frowned slightly and transmitted his voice, "Brother Chu, what's going on?" Chu Shanhe was also a little surprised, and then he said flatly, "It's impossible. He can't succeed. He must be bluffing and struggling at the last moment." Ning Bugue, fortune god Sure, and Shin Tuo were also a little confused. They all saw that Lin's son did not seem to be joking. Could it be that, as he said, the refining did not fail? "Master Shin Tuo, do you see anything?" Ning Bugue couldn't help asking. It's only been more than 10 days, and the abnormalities just now all show that there was an accident in the smelting of the embryo. I really don't understand the situation. Shin Tuo frowned tightly. As a senior spiritual tattooist, he still couldn't figure out the situation, which made Ning Bugue and the others more confused. What on earth did Lin's son want to do? At this moment, everyone in the field was also confused. "Lin's son, do you still want to fool us? You should know that even if you delay, you can't change your situation." Chu Shanhe shouted, "Old man, you're a spiritual tattooist. How dare you talk so shamelessly before you figure out the situation? You really lose the face of spiritual tattooists." Lin's son was not polite to Chu Shanhe at all. But as soon as he said this, the spiritual tattooists in the field looked at each other. Was there really any mystery in this refining that they didn't see through? Chu Shanhe was so angry that he laughed. "Haha, well, I like to see what tricks you're going to play." He was very sure in his heart that Lin's son had no power at all, because long before Lin started to refine spiritual weapons, he had secretly done something to the cyan sky furnace on the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower. He forcibly erased a formation pattern inside the furnace. Even a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos would not be able to melt the embryo of the spiritual weapon successfully. Since he couldn't refine the embryo, how could he refine the armor with spiritual tattoos? Wishful thinking. This was where Chu Shanhe's confidence came from. It was also because of this that he dared to invite big shots, such as Zhao Zhanya, Zhuo Fuguang, and Qin Baoji to suppress Lin's son. "I'm afraid that even if the stove is intact, it's impossible for you, a little bastard, to refine the armor with spiritual tattoos." Chu Shanhe sneered secretly, but in the next moment, he frowned. What is this brat doing? Not only Chu Shanhe, but also all the people present at this time were attracted to the top of the spiritual cultivation tower. Lin Sun's clothes were fluttering, his black hair was flying, and his thin and handsome figure was standing there quietly with his hands behind his back, as if waiting for something. Occasionally, he would look up at the sky. "Who knows what he is doing?" someone asked, but got no answer, because even the spiritual tattooists present were confused at the moment. "What is he doing? He's just playing tricks." Chu Shanhe sneered. Boom! However, before he could finish speaking, an earth-shattering thunderclap suddenly resounded in the clear blue sky. It was so sudden that all the people present were shocked, especially Chu Shanhe, who was trembling all over and his ears were buzzing. His face suddenly became surprised. What was this? In an instant, the sky was replaced by a layer of inky darkness. Thick clouds covered the sky, casting a shadow over the land. An indescribable oppressive aura also spread between heaven and earth, which made all the practitioners present change their expressions. Thunder retribution? Was Lin Sun going across the thunder retribution to break through the realm? This was too unexpected. Didn't he want to refine spiritual weapons? Why did he attract the thunder retribution? Boom! Suddenly in the sky, purple lightning, like a thick chain, danced and rolled wildly. The lightning was dazzling, cutting through the sky and earth, filled with the supreme pressure of heaven and earth, shocking the world. That was a kind of destructive aura, enough to make all spirits tremble and feel despair. It was really the thunder retribution. At this moment, Ning Buge, fortune god Shi, Yi Qingtian, Gong Bupo, and other famous figures couldn't help but narrow their eyes. They all saw that this thunder retribution was not a trivial matter. It was so rare that it was not like the thunder retribution of a sea spirit realm practitioner. Damn it, at this time, this little thing still, Chu Shana shouted angrily. However, he had only spoken halfway when he was shocked by a shocking scene, and he stood there in a daze. Lin Sun waved his sleeves. With a buzzing sound, a silver spear as clear as snow suddenly rose into the sky and appeared in the thunder punishment in the sky. Crack! Crack! Streaks of thick, chain-like purple thunderbolts immediately struck down and blasted on the clear, snow-white silver spear, emitting an incomparably ear-piercing rumbling sound. The most shocking thing was that the silver spear seemed to be psychic. Mysterious formations rose on its surface one after another, reflecting the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers, Kuei Neo galloping, immortal clouds surging, and other strange phenomena, which fought against the purple thunder retribution in the sky. All of a sudden, all the practitioners present were stunned, and their hearts were drowned by an indescribable shock. It was a weapon that was crossing the thunder retribution.